Okay, welcome. All right, start here, 1 second. Okay, so today's webinar, I'm going to be talking about actually a ton of stuff. And I think that if you have watched webinars before, or if this is your first webinar, I think this is probably going to be one of the more important webinars you ever watch, or actually some of the most important information that you ever hear about a job search, about how to apply for jobs. I'm going to be talking about interviewing. I'm going to be talking about your resume. I'm going to be talking about the right places that you should be applying to. I'm going to be talking about why law firms are rejecting your applications, and the law firms that are interviewing you, why they're interviewing you, and sort of the lens that they're looking through. So law firms, when they hire people, they have all sorts of different things they look at. I will talk about the law school you went to and the quality of firm you went to and some other things like that. But there's many, many more factors that come into play. And when I talk about these, what's going to be so important is this is stuff that I share with law firms in presentations in their offices, and and I've done webinars on this for law firms. This is another one. But as a candidate, also, this is extremely helpful because you're going to understand why law firms are, bringing you in, why they're hiring you, often why they're firing you, things that you don't understand. And this is especially important, I think, for first-generation attorneys, new attorneys that don't have access to a lot of this information, and also, frankly, a lot of senior attorneys, because most of them don't understand the rules that I'm going to talk about today. These rules and the things I'm going over are things that I've learned over 25 years. I've placed thousands of attorneys, and I understand these rules because I've spent so much time helping people get jobs, and I've seen why people don't get jobs. I talk to law firms on a daily basis about why people get jobs and why they don't. And so I think this is going to be extremely valuable for you. At the end of the webinar, we'll take a quick break, and then this is a live webinar, so I'll take questions, and you can ask questions about anything I cover today. I would recommend in this particular webinar taking notes. It's helpful to take notes because you will, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today will probably stick out to you, and there'll be things you're doing wrong or things you're doing right that have worked. And all of this information is stuff that most attorneys do not understand. And because they don't understand, they've severely limited their career options. They make mistakes. They have long periods of unemployment. And some people do understand these rules, but still don't advance to the extent that they could. Their careers don't last as long as they could. They don't stay in the quality of firms that they could. And so all sorts of people have problems in their job search and their career. So I'm actually very excited about this. We're really talking about all of the most important things to get a position, the reasons that law firms should screen people out, how law firms are reviewing your resume, why you're not getting interviews, why you're not getting job offers when you interview. So, you need to understand, what employers, what employers are looking for. And you need to be able to show when you're interviewing with people that you're the person who can do the work. I mean, this statement seems pretty obvious, and we're going to get a lot more into it. But there's really, I cover in webinars, and I'll talk about these also a little bit at the end, but law firms are looking for essentially 5 questions, and these are the 5 questions or 6 questions that if you understand these and you respond in the right way, they're looking for this. So they're looking for, can you do the job, which I'm going to cover with you today. They're looking at whether or not you can be managed, which means will you follow orders? Will you be easy to work with? Will you be, someone that's putting the firm's interest above yours? Are you going to commit to the job? Meaning, do you look like someone that's going to stay in the position if they hire you? And people that bounce around and stuff, that's a big warning sign. We'll talk about that. Do you really want the job? So people want to hire people that they really like, and people tend to like people that really want the job and that connect with them. And then the next one is cultural fit. And we won't talk too much about that today. So with anytime you're interviewing or applying to a legal job, the firm is really asking one question. And this is the most important question. They're asking whether or not you can do the job that they have. And it's much more involved than just your legal skills. It has a lot to do with the firm. It has a lot to do with the firm you're at. And so you have to understand how that works. And being able to do the job, which a lot of people don't understand, is dependent on the firm and the firm's clients and the type of subject matter. And so it just doesn't mean that if you have certain skills that they're immediately transferable to another firm. There's so much involved in doing a job, in terms of your hours, being in the office, all these different things that I'll talk about in a few minutes that are important. So anytime you're applying to any firm, if a firm sees your resume and they decide to interview, they believe that you can do whatever job it is that they have. The law firms will, and I'm going to talk about this at the beginning. It's not something pleasant to talk about, but they're going to evaluate, whether or not look like you have the intellectual ability to do the sophistication of the work that they have. And they're also going to, look at you in terms of how you would look with the clients and things they're working at. And they will have different types of settings. So different law firms will place high, value on your academic, performance. And so a lot of them, if you have really good academic performance, they're going to believe that you can work on complex assignments. But not every firm rewards that type of skill set. So being able to do the job means different things at different caliber and different types of firms. And so when a firm does have a job, good firms, so I know a lot of people are interested in the best firms. So they're going to look at your law school and your performance. When they're looking at your resume, they're going to look at the quality and reputation of your past employers. So you can't just go to a small firm and expect always to get into a large firm. And then they're going to look at your experience in your practice area. And I'm going to talk in a lot more depth about this, but I'm just going to go over some of the basics. And then they're also going to look at your previous employers. So they want to see how long you've stayed at each employer. The longer you stay at any employer, the better off you're going to be in your career in the long run. So they're going to look at that, and then they're going to look at often your potential to generate business if you're more than maybe 7 or 8 years out of law school. So I'm going to talk about some of the stuff about law school, and that's thing. I just have to do this at the beginning, but there's a lot more important information that I will cover because most people do not go to top law schools. I mean, there's 10 law schools that are 15 that are top, and then there's 285 other ones that are accredited. So the quality of your law school is this particular conversation is most important if you're trying to get into large firms or you're in large firms. So the law school, that someone goes is important. And a lot of times, law firms will hire people that, they'll hire people that are, overqualified, or sometimes they'll hire underqualified or underqualified attorneys. So if you're underqualified and you're trying to get a job in a large law firm or a really good law firm, what'll happen is when you get into those firms most of the time, you'll be practicing with people, and this is not always the case, but those people will often be quicker on their feet with legal things. They'll be able to understand people, and they'll be able to see things in a way that that you may not. And so they'll often avoid collaborating with you on work. And it's difficult for attorneys that don't really come in with the intellectual firepower to do as well in different types of firms. And it's not a nice thing to say, but often the people that go to the best law schools and do the best in any law school have certain legal abilities and insights into things that are, that other people don't have. And so the other thing is when a law firm's hiring people, and this is what law firms are doing, the clients want to see people for the largest firms that went to the top law school. And so they will give often the most important work to attorneys that they can put on different matters that the client sees that went to the best law schools. And then if you don't go to the best law schools and didn't do the best, if a large law firm hires you, they will often not have you work on their most important clients and stuff. So it's just something to understand. So this limits often your opportunity, even if you get a job in a major firm. And then if you're intellectually incompatible with different firms, meaning you're not keeping up or attorney's not able to keep up, then it becomes, very, very hard. And attorneys like that are phased out very, very quickly. So it's not always a good idea to try to get a job in the best firms if you're not confident enough or you don't feel like you have the intellectual firepower. Again, I don't like saying any of this stuff, but what happens, and I see it time and time again, is an attorney that may be underqualified for a certain firm in terms of their raw intellectual ability and ability to understand things and collaborate with other attorneys will not do well. And even if they do get a job there, they're often not going to be on the most important matters and so forth. And so often people will get hired in different firms, based on short-term demand. They'll get hired sometimes based on relationships, and it's almost always the same. The attorney gets there and they can't perform at the level required. There's been different times in history when there's been like incredible demand in different practice areas, like corporate, for example, and people from lesser law schools were hired that didn't have necessarily the intellectual ability. And the second thing slowed down, those people were let go. And so most of the time, if you're not a top performer at a top law school for the biggest firms, that can be a problem. And it's just something, I hate to talk about this, but I've just seen this time and time again. At one firm I worked for, there was a guy there that had gone to not a good law school that was hired because his father was a client. And he was working on, the several types of matters, being given certain types of matters, and he couldn't really grasp the complexity of the work or, operate the way the firm wanted him. So, despite the connections, he was able to get there and try to work hard. He didn't have the intellectual firepower to do that. I knew another person that was in a major law firm that was hired that had a LLM from a foreign country and graduated from Harvard Law School. And LLMs are not it's not something that people can necessarily evaluate your skills. And this person had an incredible difficulty understanding the difference between federal and state law, and also was let go. So again, firms will often relax standards, and when they relax standards, they often have a lot of difficulty because the people that they hire are not able to keep up. And often, it's just, why you look at top law firms, you look at their roster of attorneys and so forth. It's the pedigree of the attorneys of the top law firms. It's part of their brand, and it reinforces the culture because other top law firms, other top attorneys with the top credentials want to work with other attorneys with top credentials. So attorneys with top credentials attract other attorneys with top credentials. And for whatever reason, I don't think it matters that much, but people seem to think this, the school they went to and want to associate with other people like that, throughout their careers. And so people that are, even if you're hired in a firm like that and a firm hires someone like that, many of the time, those people will have fewer opportunities, less work, and end up leaving the firm. And it's sad because, one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is, I'll just be completely frank with you. What happens is there's a lot of, and this is important for everyone on this call to understand. So people are often hired by firms for different reasons. Sometimes the firm may want someone from a certain type of background that may not have done that well in law school. Maybe the firm says, I'm just being hypothetical here. Maybe they say we need people from, it doesn't, well, I'm not even going to get into it, but they'll hire people that are potentially not from, don't have the strongest skills and the strongest background because They want to bring in people from different types of groups, and I'm not that it could be any group. It could be whatever. I mean, it's just different types of groups. And so they hire people like that. And then it's very sad because people get there. And then what happens is they're not able to keep up. They don't understand assignments as well. They don't engender trust among partners and associates. And they have a very bad experience. And they're often either asked to leave or they leave on their own, kind of demoralized. So you have to understand if you are going into an environment, even if it pays a lot, where you're not necessarily always going to be able to compete with those people, it can be demoralizing. And so this is one of the things that a lot of law firms, they make mistakes doing this kind of hiring sometimes, but they also, people often will make mistakes, going to those firms. And so if you're not intellectually capable, a lot of times, then it can be a mismatch. And I'm just telling you, there's no sense for someone to go into an environment as a second-class citizen unless they have an incredible drive and they're incredibly good at their job, and that doesn't matter. But you have to surround yourself. You typically want to be in a position where you're the smartest person in the room. And if you're not the smartest person in the room, that's going to create problems. And so I just see this all the time. I see it with people that get in over their heads at different firms, and it's counterproductive. The other thing that law firms do, and this may be something that you do with your career, is they will often hire overqualified attorneys. So attorneys that are overqualified will often, leave firms. And so law firms, you may take a job, for example, in a firm that is not as good is the one you could get into. And then you could get into a better firm, but it could be economic reasons, or it could be all sorts of reasons. And then if a law firm hires people that are overqualified, that attorney is going to be entitled. They will think badly of the firm. They will often undermine people on the firm, other people at the firm that have been working there and may have been happy. They may feel unengaged. And so hiring overqualified attorneys is a real mistake. And so I'm sure you've probably seen, if you're a highly qualified attorney, you may wonder, why am I not getting interviews with a lot of these firms where I could do the work and maybe they're not as good at where I'm at? Well, the reason is a lot of times is because the law firm knows you're going to be unhappy, and it's a mistake. So what happens is, if a law firm's hiring people that are overqualified, and that overqualified attorney gets there, doesn't think the work is the kind of work that they want to do, or not as sophisticated as they want to do, that is going to create dissatisfaction. So I work with candidates all the time, and then I can probably think of at least 10 I'm working with right now that went to firms that they thought that now they think are beneath them, and it's creating issues. If you join a firm where you could get into a much better firm for whatever reason, you have to, you're often going to be frustrated. The firm's going to be frustrated, and it's just a bad match. I mean, you can't. Law firms make this mistake all the time. People leave, and then candidates make this mistake all the time, and they leave. So an example would be that a mid-sized firm hires an Ivy League corporate attorney because this attorney can't get a job at large firms during a market slowdown. The attorney will get there. They'll feel out of place. They'll be used to larger clients, higher deals, or whatever. And once things pick up, they almost always leave. It's just how it works. Another example would be, a small local law firm somewhere hires a top 10, law school graduate who, for whatever reason, didn't participate in on-campus interviewing. The attorney will get there. They'll quickly be dissatisfied with the pay, the quality, the firm's reputation. And after gaining some experience, they'll always move to a larger, more prestigious setting. So this happens all the time. People graduate from top law schools and they don't get a job in a large firm for whatever reason. They get into a smaller firm, they're unhappy, and they end up leaving. So it's a bad for the attorney. It's bad for the firm. And so law firms always make this mistake quite a bit, and it just rarely works out. Those types of attorneys are always going to try to be getting into better firms. And so law firms, it's just what happens. And law attorneys are almost always trying to get into better law firms if they're underqualified. And so if you're looking for a job, you need to find a firm where where you feel challenged and fulfilled. Sometimes people will join law firms, as a short-term thing, but you need to be trying to find firms that are a match for your abilities and for the type of people you want to practice with and the type of work that they're doing. And then this is kind of the big one. So we talked a little bit about law schools. Law schools, again, I just want to be clear that law schools are typically most important earlier in your career. They're not that important later in your career because if you didn't go to a top law school, it doesn't really matter in the long run if you're able to do other certain things in terms of getting in terms of what you're doing with your career. So if you are able to get a job, at some point in your career, whether it's earlier or it's later, so people do move from middle market firms to major law firms and do well there. Once you get a really good quality legal employer in your resume, that is really kind of the most important thing that law firms are going to evaluate when they're hiring you. They're less likely to look at your law school than they are your experience, because the experience is what they're selling to law firms. And if you have really good experience, that can help. I'll give you an example. It's kind of interesting. I'm working with a guy, I placed him, but I have a candidate that was working in a small market in Michigan, and he was doing mainly like personal injury work. And he wanted to get into doing commercial litigation. So commercial litigation is done typically by larger firms. It works more sophisticated, and they can pay more, or depending, or less. I mean, it depends on what kind of personal injury. But he wanted to get into commercial litigation. He didn't go to a good law school, and so we did a search in Michigan for him, and we were able to find 3 or 4 firms that interviewed him for commercial litigation positions, and they were in decent sized markets like Lansing, Grand Rapids. I don't think Detroit, but decent sized markets in Michigan. And so I was able to get him a job at a decent sized firm of like 15 people doing commercial litigation. So he's going to do that for a couple of years, and then he's going to move to a larger firm. So the quality of the legal employer you're with is really how the most important thing that employers are evaluating you when they're hiring you. So if you go to a 3rd-tier law school and you did well there and you're smart and you get a job with a major firm, you'll be able to get probably at least 1 or 2 other jobs over the next several years with other major firms, provided you run your career in the correct way. So this doesn't, the law, I'm just telling you, the law schools you go to don't matter. When an employer is evaluating you, really the most important thing that they can look at is the quality of the employer that you're currently at. So if you're at a really good employer, law firms know a really good law firm or a decent law firms have an understanding of the quality of work that law firm does. They can see that you can probably do the same quality of work for them. And if they have an indication that you're doing well there, then they're much more likely to hire you. So if you're at a good legal employer, and regardless of how you got there, that's going to be really the most important indicator of what people are looking for when they're hiring you. It's really the employer. So you have to always think, what is the quality of my employer? And if you're doing well at your current employer and it's well regarded, and meaning a law firm, then you can always usually get a job at a law firm with the same quality or often a little bit better. One of the reasons, by the way, when people go in house or they go in the government, there's all sorts of reasons that law firms don't hire those sorts of people most often. But the main reason is because they have no idea the quality of work that's expected in an in-house job. They have no idea of the quality of work that might be expected in a government job. So with no understanding of what your employer requires and so forth, and the fact that you're also in a different practice setting, it becomes very, very difficult to get hired if you're not in a law firm. And so, this, is really the most important thing. And the next thing that's really important is if you are in a large law firm, then how long have you been able to stay there? Because, or any size law firm, a middle market law firm. And if you've stayed there a long time, this is going to signal that you're doing well. Because what happens, again, I'm going to go back to an example that I'm not comfortable talking about, but I'm talking about it anyway. Law firms will often hire different sorts of people from different groups that are underqualified to go there. And then those people will get into a major firm and they'll be there 1 year and having problems. And so law firms are very nervous about hiring people that don't have any sort of career stability. So if you go to a large law firm and you stay there for 3 years, or even a middle market firm for 4 years, then law firms are going to know you do good work and you're a really good risk. So you're not a good risk if you haven't been at a place for a long time, but you're a good risk the longer you've been there. And moving up in terms of the quality of your firms is also a good thing. Like the example I gave you about the personal injury attorney. So, some people, like come out of law school and that's like the best they'll ever do. They went to a good law school, they got into a good firm, but their career kind of, goes downhill from there. And so your dedication to wherever you are and your capacity to grow and to stay there is really the most important thing that law firms are looking at. I had a guy recently, and it's very interesting. He'd been out of law school for like 15 years. He was in Northern California, and he'd worked for two really good firms, one for 5 years as a litigator, and then another, maybe it was 5 or 6 years as a litigator. And then he went in-house, and he lost his job, and he was in-house after a year, which is very, very common. So people go in-house, and when companies merge, they downsize, a new GC comes in and wants their own legal department. So he lost his job and he'd been unemployed for a couple of years and no one was interviewing him. No one wanted to hire him. And because he was coming from an in-house environment. So literally unemployed for 2 years. And I was able to get him interviews based on, selling him as someone that had a lot of career stability and obviously did really good work at these large law firms and could transfer that work into another firm, and be good at his job. And that did sell. So the more experienced, the more demanding the employer is, the more that's going to prove that you're a good attorney. So you can't prove you're a good attorney necessarily. Your law school is going to often determine the first jobs you get. But once you gain substantial experience at a really demanding employer, whoever that is, or a good employer, that's so much more marketable than just the law school. So a lot of people, and it's very, very common, I would say this happens to at least 30 to 40% of people that go to top law schools. They may go to a top law school, but then they get into firms and they have all sorts of issues. They could be the quality of the work, they could be their ego, they could be their ability to get along with others, they could be their commitment to the work, all sorts of things. So a lot of people will get into firms, but they'll struggle in the actual practice and in taking, being good at taking exams, and the LSAT and all that has nothing really to do in terms of what happens when you get into to a good law firm. So tons of attorneys make this mistake. A lot of attorneys, it's very, very common. They'll start at a large firm, then a law firm that might be they don't like it, they go to another large law firm, and then they might move to a law firm beneath them, not think it's good enough, and their careers just never take off because there's never any commitment. So you should always think whatever you're doing, that the longer you're at a good employer, the better your pedigree. And if you move up, if you're at one employer 2 years, you move to a better firm, and then from there a better firm, law firms are going to be impressed. So your ability to handle pressure, the expectations of whatever firm you're at, and consistently stay there is going to make you much, much more marketable. And this is kind of the golden rule. Like if I have a candidate that has less than 1 year of experience at a firm, and they've been at two firms before that, they're not going to be marketable. So wherever you go, if you can get a better job at a better firm, then that's good. But you should always be trying to put yourself in a position where law firms are looking at you and thinking like this person's going to stick around, because being able to have stability at one employer means that you were able to do good work there, and whatever you were doing was often well received. And so if there's frequent short stints at different firms, that can raise concern. So what happens to a lot of attorneys is they get into a firm and they may have performance issues, they may have issues with people, whatever it is, but they will often leave. So you may look at your resume. Your resume may show several moves. You may have moved every year, every 2 years, and every time you move, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for you to get another job because you're competing with people that have stability, and the stability will show that you're probably doing good work. There's no rating organization for attorneys. There's no way that a law firm or anybody hiring you can tell what quality of work you do, but they can always understand that if you're at a firm and you've been there for a long time, because they know that law firm wouldn't have kept you around unless you were doing a good job. So when you leave, there's always suspicion that you may be leaving because there's something wrong with your performance. And I'll tell you today about different ways to interview and overcome kind of that perception, but it's very, very important. And if you have experience, for example, with a less demanding employer, firms are going to have concerns about whether or not you can perform at their level. And so different firms will have different expectations, but what may be acceptable in one firm may fall short in a firm with different standards. And it's very common, for example, like you may be in insurance defense. Insurance defense, the quality of work required is much different often than what would happen at a larger firm doing commercial litigation. The reason for that is insurance companies don't pay a lot of money. The attorneys have to work through things very quickly. There's not a lot of in-depth research and so forth that happens. And so if you're trying to transition from insurance defense to commercial litigation, for example, that can be difficult because the training that you received is probably not going to be what those firms would expect. So they're going to be suspect if you're coming out of a firm like that. If you're coming out of a firm that doesn't have the reputation for doing the best work, that's going to hurt you. And so, you may be working at a firm that has clients will have large budgets. You have to focus on speed rather than precision, and spending a lot of time on that sort of stuff. And so that sort of environment is not necessarily what the high-end firms require. High-end firms, like the larger firm you go to, the more you're going to be expected to look deeper into matters, the more you're going to be expected to really turn out extremely high quality work, the more demanding it's going to be, and the different types of skills you have. And just, if you're at a small firm, for example, and handling a lot of clients, if you were at a large firm, the large firm would, general counsels often are reviewing the work product of associates, and partners have a certain type of work quality. And so the work that's presented, it has to be perfect. You read a brief from a top law firm to a court, you probably rarely find a typo. But if you do it from smaller law firms, a lot of time you will. And there's no, the reason for that is often the quality of the attorneys, but it's often just the budget that larger firms have to work very, very hard in matters. So if you come out of a firm like that and you spend a lot of time at a larger firm like that, people are going to have some idea about the quality of your work. So if a law firm's doing hiring from smaller law firms, there's often going to be much more rigor that's expected. And if you're working, for example, for consumers, you're doing working for small business and individuals, the quality of work is also not going to be as high. So if you're trying to apply to firms that are larger, that are working on more sophisticated matters, and you're not working on sophisticated matters, that's often going to be one of the reasons you're not getting interviews. And that's one of the quality of firm that people are coming from is, just really like one of the most important things. And it's something that law firms will look at. So if you're trying to get interviews, the better interviews you can get with the firms doing more complex work, if you want to work at a firm like that, is going to be important. Now, this doesn't apply just to practice areas like corporate and commercial litigation. It also applies to even practice areas like personal injury or immigration. Certain firms have exceptional reputations in personal injury. Other firms have exceptional reputations, like Fragaman, for example, and in immigration. Other firms have very, very good reputations, like I guess for Mendelsohn, Ford and Harrison, in employment. So it doesn't have to be like a big firm practice area. It's really a question of the quality of the legal employer. And the quality of the legal employer, by the way, it's kind of interesting. It could even be working for a solo practitioner. I had a woman once in Texas, and she was working for a solo practitioner who was very smart. He'd gone to University of Chicago Law School, and he'd gone to work in a major law firm, become a partner there, doing healthcare transaction related work. And so she got hired by him. She didn't go to a top 20 law school or anything like that. And she worked for him for 4 or 5 years. And then when she wanted to look for a job, it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. She was getting interviews with, major Am Law 100 law firms in Texas. I mean, I think she got 3 of them at major law firms because people were familiar with the attorney that she worked with and knew that if she worked directly with him, she was probably a really, really good attorney. So you could be working for a really good solo practitioner. You could be working for a really small firm. You could be working for a firm that has a really, really good reputation for personal injury or whatever the practice area is. And that will help you when you're trying to be marketable. So what is the quality of the firm you're getting an interview with and then or that you're working at? And that really can have a lot to do with how successful you are in your job search. And it's something that law firms take very, very seriously. The other thing is your practice areas. So attorneys will make the mistake all the time of trying to apply to jobs that don't necessarily align with your practice area. And I spend a lot of time, I talk to attorneys every day that are, getting interviews at BCG and so forth. And most resumes have huge mistakes in them. They will talk about multiple practice areas that they do. People are very proud that they may have done 3 or 4 different types of practice areas, and they list them on the resume. But when you look at jobs, if you ever look at, you look at job postings, whether you're on a firm website or on a Law Crossing or Indeed or something, these are almost always for people that do one practice area. So law firms will hire people that look like they have experience in the practice area that they're hiring for, and the more the better. So if you were, for example, if you're a law firm and you're hiring a trust and estates attorney, if you have a trust and estates attorney that's applying, and the attorney that's doing trust and estates says on their resume that they're currently doing trust and estates, they do some immigration and family law, and then you get another resume where the person talks about how all they do is trust and estates, that's the resume that you're going to interview for. So why would you list different practice areas on your resume if you're trying to get a job in a certain practice area? So people make this mistake all the time. And this is what law firms look for. If I'm talking to a law firm about who they should interview and who they should hire, I'm always talking about the practice area that the person's in and how good their experience is in that practice area, because that's what law firms are looking for. They're not looking for people that do a lot of things. So anytime you're applying to firm, this is a huge mistake, by the way. This is something that probably I would say 85% of attorneys do on their resume. And if they fix this, they would get so many more interviews. I had a candidate not too long ago. He was, I don't know, 12 or 13 years out of law school. And he started off doing insurance defense. Then he did some family law. Then he opened his own practice area doing some personal injury and other things. And then for the past 3 or 4 years, he'd been doing a mix of trust and estates and a couple other different practice areas. And so he wasn't getting interviews. And I told him, all you need to do is on your first 3 or 4 years of experience, your last 3 or 4 years of experience, say nothing, talk only about trust and estates, nothing else. And then for your previous positions, just list that you were an associate in the firm. Don't say what you were doing. And so this guy went from, maybe submitting 50 applications to different firms and not getting any interviews to the next round of submissions, which might have been another 50. He got like 6 or 7 interviews. So this is what law firms are looking for. So you need to understand on your resume needs to look like you're doing one practice area. This one thing that you're learning in this webinar alone could dramatically change the course of your career, because no one does this. And your experience, whatever you do, if you want to work in a larger firm than you're at, and you want to have long-term career stability, it's very, very important to have experience and to look like you're doing one practice area. This is what clients are looking for. If you were you were searching for a doctor and you had I don't know, you had a broken bone, you could go to an orthopedic surgeon, or would you hire someone that had really, really good experience? I mean, that's not even that serious. Let's say it was like heart disease or something. You had heart disease, so you could go to a cardiologist and someone that had a lot of experience doing that, and years of experience. Or you could go to someone that was a cardiologist, orthopedic surgeon, nephrologist, and had all these different things listed on their experience. You would choose the person that does one thing. So it's very, very important that you understand. Everybody, I mean, you should write this down. Your resume, most often, depending, I mean, sometimes there's firms who want multiple practice areas, but almost always it's one thing. Your resume needs to look like you do one thing, and it needs to have the scent of that one thing. So someone needs to look at your resume and think only this practice area. So if you're in all these associations in law school, take them out unless they're related to your practice area. I mean, you certainly can say you're on law review or the editor of a journal or something, but no one cares about these other organizations. No one cares about your previous employers. They only care about, and if they weren't in that practice area, they only care about if you look like you're committed to that practice area and doing one thing. So this alone could, well, making this change to your resume in your job search could triple 10 times the number of interviews you get. I see candidates all the time that make this change on their resume and just dramatically increase the number of interviews. Like some get no interviews, and all of a sudden they're getting multiple interviews just by making this change. And so it's important. That's what employers are looking for. They look at your resume and they see, do you look like you have experience? And so law firms, want to see people that have been trained, that are invested in a certain practice area. So if you have 5 years of experience, but during that 5 years you were doing 5 different practice areas, that essentially means you have 1 year of experience in a practice area. But if you have 5 years of experience and you're doing in one practice area, that means you have 5 years of experience in that practice area. And you're probably a much more competent attorney. And so law firms look for that. And this is one of the most important things any law firm can look at, because if you're doing a bunch of different things, you're not necessarily an expert in that practice area. And law firms hire experts in different practice areas. So, and then often, people will get into practice areas that don't match them, and they don't match their interest. And because they don't match their interest and stuff, all sorts of problems happen. I was talking to a guy just yesterday, and he had this amazing background. He went to college and got a degree, I think, in biology and computer science, and he got a master's degree in computer science. And then he went to law school and did very well. And then he thought he wanted to be a patent attorney. No, he didn't want to be a patent attorney. He wanted to be a patent litigator. And he got into a firm that was making him do only patent prosecution, which is essentially sitting in an office and not talking to people. He was very, very unhappy. The law firm wanted him only to do patent prosecution. When he said he didn't want to do patent prosecution, they made him sign, they basically fired him and made him sign a severance agreement, giving him 3 months severance. And his severance runs out. I mean, he'll be on the website till December. And so that's a problem. And he was put into a practice area that doesn't match his interests. So you also have to be in a practice area that speaks to you. And typically, and this is important, because if you want to have a long-term career practicing law, and you want to understand what law firms are looking for, you need to do something that is fun. So typically people that like English and history and things like that are really good litigators. They like litigation. People that, even actors and people that did things like that, I mean, they're very good at personal injury and plaintiffs type work. But you have to do something that is a passion for you and that matches your interests. Some people like doing defense. Some people like doing plaintiff's work. Some people, people that are good in math and science and those sorts of things and naturally gravitate towards that, typically do much better in transactional type things. So it should be corporate, real estate, patent prosecution. So you have to be in a practice area that you like and something that you're committed to, and something that you believe over time you can get better and better at. And when you go to work, it's actually fun. So that's important. And a lot of people are in misaligned roles. And if a law firm hires someone whose interest is in something like that, then the person typically won't do well. If you like something, you'll keep learning and you'll have fun and you'll be a better attorney than people that aren't. So, also a lot of people try to switch practice areas, and firms will often, sometimes, I mean, they'll rarely hire people that are trying to switch practice areas. And so someone may say, I don't like this particular branch of law and I want to try this other branch of law. But most people, when they do that, are unhappy. And so it's often just working in a law firm itself, not the specific specialty, but it can be. But law firms have to be very careful when they're hiring people trying to switch practice areas, and they very, very rarely do. I had a candidate that was he was a litigator, and he'd been first in his class from like a top 15 law school. And he got this job with a top law firm in San Diego, like an AmLaw 100 law firm. And he worked there for 2 years, and he decided that he really, really wanted to do corporate work. And so when he came to me, he'd applied to hundreds of firms on his own, basically saying he wanted to do corporate work. And he didn't get a single interview. And which basically shows you how difficult it can be sometimes to switch practice areas. Now that's a major switch. That's switching from transactional to litigation. But at the same time, just think about that, how difficult. I mean, he didn't get interviews. I started working with him, and I got him some interviews in Texas, which is, I couldn't believe it. But with major firms, I got him, I think, 2 interviews there. And then eventually the firm he was at agreed to allow him to switch practice areas, which was smart. But a lot of times, when people are trying to do that, they often do it for the wrong reasons. And that can be, something that if you're trying to do that can be very difficult. Now, I have a candidate right now also I'm working with. He was a defense attorney for like 15 years. He switched to a plaintiff's firm about a year ago, and he didn't like it because a lot of it's remote, but he is getting interviews as a plaintiff's attorney. But being a plaintiff's attorney versus defense is kind of different. But just understand that when a law firm's hiring, they're much better off hiring people that are specialists than anything else. So someone that does nothing but securities law and has been doing securities law for 5 years is going to be a much better hire than someone that has general corporate law experience. So that depth and the ability to focus on something is important. And different practice areas have different sorts of expectations. So I've had litigators all the time. I had one guy who was very sad. He was really at the top of his class at UCLA. I mean, I think he was like, one of the top 10 students. He was, I don't know, he was ranked or something, or some award for the top 10 students. And he'd gotten a job in a top law firm, and he didn't like it and wanted to work in a smaller law firm. And he got in the smaller law firm, and it wasn't like the firm he was working at. The larger firm was just giving him things to write and different, writing memos and briefs and things. And so he got in the smaller law firm, which is a very good small law firm. And all of a sudden, they wanted him to go into court and argue things, and he couldn't do it. He didn't have the skills to go into court. And it was very sad. They let him go after 6 or 7 months. I think they kept giving him a chance, but he got into court and was just very awkward, and wasn't doing well and lost his job. And then I saw him about 10 years later, and he was just alcoholic and not doing well. So so that this is, it's the quality of the firm. The expectations of an individual firm are very important in terms of what they have, and so you need to understand that. And talk about this. Another one, deposition, and that sort of thing. So different types of environments are going to require different things, and so you need to, when a law firm is hiring people, they're looking for that. So someone that has, for example, a lot of trial experience. And if you go to a firm that, you want to go to a firm that requires that, it just depends. So you can't succeed when you're in a firm if they have different practice area demands. Some firms want people that literally, can manage entire deals on, from behalf of corporations, for example. And other attorneys can't do that. I had a girl that I worked with not too long ago. She was really stellar. She'd gone to Yale Law School and had done very, very well there. I think she was first in her class from Duke or something in college. And so she moved to Silicon Valley with her husband or something. I'm not sure why she did that, but she got there and, she worked in a firm. They weren't giving her the level of responsibility she had solo promo, but she was literally able to run entire deals, and she was incredibly unhappy. I mean, she was just, dying and just very, very mad. And, and then ended up, this is another case, I mean, where she kind of went off the rails. I think she quit her job. I got her a bunch of interviews, but she went into the interviews and she wasn't enthusiastic. She was still mad. She felt like she was never going to get that type of experience again, and very upset. And so, when firms have to hire people, you have to go to work with people that match kind of your background and what's important to you and what's important to the firm. And if you get in there, that can be important. So I talked a little bit about this earlier, but I'm going to go into a little more detail about it because it's so important. The most reliable indicator of someone being able to succeed in a firm is how long they were at their last firm. So longevity that reflects stability. It reflects the fact that you were able to do well, that you were able to do, continually getting work. You're able to get along with people. And so if you have a lot of short stints at different firms, that can reveal all sorts of deeper issues with fit, motivation, resilience, ability to get along with people. And then, so law firms are looking at that. And then the next thing, and this is something I do interview prep for candidates at BCG that are getting interviews every day. And so one of the most important questions law firms are always asking is like, why you're looking to move. Because if you're just looking to move, that obviously is not as attractive as someone that has really good reasons for moving. So you may be moving to try to grow. You may be trying to escape problems in your existing firm. But there's a lot of people, and you may be one of them. It's very, very common, people that move firms quite a bit. And so that's going to really affect kind of your ability, the way law firms look at you. And so if you have a lot of jobs on your resume, law firms, if they often won't interview, but if they do interview you, then they're going to be, very, very concerned about whether or not you're going to leave. And so I have all sorts of ways of helping people frame that. If people are leaving a firm, I can say maybe there's not enough work. I can say that the person's working remotely, they want to work in an office. I can say all these different things. They want to get more sophisticated work, things that will help them. But at the same time, you have to understand that anytime a firm is interviewing you, they're looking very closely at why you're leaving. And people that don't have good reasons don't get hired. So it's important to understand kind of why that happens. And so I'll just tell you a quick example. I've told this before, but I just think it's so interesting. 25 years ago, I hired 2 recruiters at BCG. One had been at her previous employer for 6 years, and the other had stayed. Actually, I think it was more than 8. I'm saying the first one stayed with me for 6 years, and then the other one I think stayed with me for 8. But the second year, the first one had been at her previous employer for 6 years, and she stayed with me for 8 years. And then the second one had been in her last job, I think what it was, how many years? It was quite a bit, 13 years. And then she went on to stay at BCG for 16 years. And then in that time, I probably hired 50 recruiters, maybe during that same period of time. And I used to hire a lot of people that had lost jobs in their law firm, and I thought they were really good candidates and could be good recruiters. And they might have been at their last job for a couple of years or 1 year. And all of those recruiters that had been at their previous jobs for a short period of time that I hired, and other ones that had been at their jobs for 3 years or whatever, were all gone. I mean, they lasted a few years. And so, past employment, how long people are at things, people come into companies and law firms and things, and they make it work, and other people don't. So if someone's been at an employer for a long period of time, that says a lot. And so the longer you're an employer, the better predictor for long-term success. So it's really one of the most important things that employers can look at, because if they hire someone that's been at their last firm for 10 years, that person is much, much more likely to stick around. I'll tell you a quick story. It's kind of interesting. I have a candidate that I placed, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and he'd been at a major law firm in New York City for 14 years, and as a litigator. As a 14th year litigator in New York City, even if you're coming from a top firm, it becomes extremely difficult to move just because there's so many litigators. If you don't have any work, that's a problem. There's not as, and most law firms want people, it's just very, very difficult to get a position in New York City if you're a senior litigator. And I worked with him, and he was able to get interviews, but at the same time, it was very, very difficult because he was senior, but the reason law firms were interviewing him was just because of his, they thought he was a very good risk, because even though they might have had openings for like a 5th or 6th year attorney, these firms took a risk on him because they knew that he would go there and commit. And so your record of loyalty and endurance are very important. So that's one of the things that law firms are looking at. So if you don't have that on your resume, you need to at some point look like someone that's going to stick around, and it's going to change how much interest you get from employers. It's just going to make a major difference in how well you do. So, how many interviews? Sorry, you get, and how how that works. So it's very, very important. There's something that law firms look at, and will get you jobs that you normally wouldn't. So it's very important. Just think about how long have I been an employer? Because again, if you're an employer and you see someone that's been at 5 or 3 firms in 5 years, and then you have another person that's been at one firm for 5 years, you're going to pick the person that's been at one firm for 5 years because the odds are that person does good work. The odds are that person gets along with people. The odds are that that person is going to commit. It looks better for the stability of the firm to hire the person that's stable. It looks better for the the clients of the firm because there's continuity and representation. It doesn't rock the boat when people leave. There's just all sorts of reasons. Then the person probably does good work. So having that sort of stability in your resume is very, very important. If you don't have it, you should really think about how can I get it, because that will teach you how to get along with people. It'll teach you how to work in adverse environments and all sorts of things. And it will make you probably a better attorney because you'll learn how to get along with a bunch of different people, and you'll be able to get consistent work and not have to continually go to different firms or stop and go. So these are different questions that law firms are looking for, and people when they these are questions you should ask when you're going in to different firms and understanding what's important and how you can perform there. So a lot of firms want people to work independently, others collaboratively. Different firms have different types of people you'll be working with. So some could be paired with difficult partners or easygoing partners. I had a woman once. She was a graduate of Harvard Law School, and very smart. Again, another person was the top of her class, and she got a job with Skadden, but she worked with a guy that did art law, and her whole time there, which was maybe 6 or 7 years, was not that stressful. It was a kind of an easy, very easy job. She was paired with a very easygoing partner, and she was able to work from home a lot and take care of kids. And I mean, it was a great job, but it just depended, she probably wouldn't have liked that if she was paired with someone, different. And some law firms will expect you to work with clients, other behind the scenes. Other law firms will allow you to specialize in your practice area, which is very smart. Other law firms will give you opportunity in different practice areas. So you need to think if that's something you want. Some people do. I had a woman that I placed a couple weeks ago, and she was she really wanted to do some IP litigation, but she was hired with the firm to do commercial litigation. And so she actually wanted to kind of make that transition, which isn't necessarily the best idea, but she went to a firm that told her they would give her some IP litigations. That was how she made that choice. Some firms are going to have really long hours, others aren't. So it's very common for attorneys now, which is kind of interesting, to go to, and it's smart, to go to firms that don't necessarily have those hours or have balance. So I had a woman in New York about 3 weeks ago, and she was working at a major law firm, working these incredible hours. And she started doing her job search, and she wanted to go to like a middle market firm. in New York and got a job where the expectations were maybe 1,800 hours or 1,650 or something. She took like a significant pay cut of like $100,000, but that was something that she knew was sustainable. She knew she could stay there. The firm has a reputation of making people that stay there partner. Some law firms will require incredible amounts of travel. I have one candidate I'm working with right now that got on a plane at like midnight last night to fly to Texas to go to a hearing. And the guy's probably in his early 60s. And so that's not the kind of job he wants. So a lot of firms will require travel. Some firms will require a lot of face time and want you to be in the office. Others won't. Some firms will encourage you to network and give you client development budgets. Others won't. Some law firms will just allow you to do work. And others will push you out if you don't bring in business. So these are important questions to ask, because if you go to a firm that is going to want you to bring in business, which you shouldn't do, but if you don't, then eventually you're going to lose your job. I had another guy who was kind of crazy. He's a trust and estates attorney with maybe 15 years of experience, and a law firm made him an offer this week, which I couldn't believe, of a salary of $50,000 a year, and then they said they would give him 30% of all the trust and estates work he brought in and did himself to the firm. So it was literally they basically were only saying that we'll pay you 30% of the work you're doing for the business you bring in, and obviously wasn't a good position for him because he's doing it on his own. Other law firms will expect you to supervise people. Other law firms will encourage you to go out in the market and write and speak and things. Others won't. Other law firms will expect you to work long hours and the weekend and stuff. Others won't. Other law firms will expect you to do administrative or secretarial work. Others won't. Other law firms will pressure you to socialize your colleagues and attend firm events. And each of these things I'm bringing up are important, because if you go to a law firm that requires things that aren't in your wheelhouse or are interesting to you, can hurt you. Other law firms will expect you to work with very controversial clients on matters that you think are distasteful. Other law firms have very bad press, and people will go there. I had a law firm that a guy that was working for a law firm. I couldn't believe it. There was this attorney in California. I forget. He was the one that was representing I don't know, some woman that was suing Donald Trump for sexual harassment or something, and he was all over the press, and then he got in trouble for what did he get in trouble for? Oh, for trying to shake down Nike or something, for not releasing some information. Anyway, that was bad, but the guy was okay with it. And some law firms will, if you join a law firm, there's just no path to partnership, and that's important. And then some law firms are, the compensation may be important to you, so that's important. And some law firms have good benefits, other don't. Some people literally that I'm working with will choose a law firm based on the quality of the benefits. I've seen that happen several times. It's very common. It's very common. So reviews are important. How that happens. Other people will be hired for firms where they'll only work on one client or many clients. Other firms will just be crazy. There'll be lots of partner departures. There'll be all sorts of drama going on behind the scenes. And so all these things can affect your longevity in a firm and how well you'll do there over time, and whether or not you're comfortable. And these are reasons that people also leave firms. Sometimes law firms will go to firms where there's not really any growth in the practice area, where things aren't expanding. And if things aren't expanding, that's a problem. That means there's going to be less opportunity. And if things aren't expanding or they're contracting, that's scary. So people will join firms all the time, and the firm may say, "Hey, we're interested in getting a certain practice area," and then or maybe they're trying to experiment getting work in a practice area, and will join that, and nothing will happen, and they won't have any work. So these are a lot of reasons people leave. These are often very good reasons. If you're in an interview and you're talking about why you're leaving, you can say there's a lot of departures. You can say there's the firm is losing clients. There's no work in my practice area. You can say I want to work in the office and not in the office. So these are all things. If that a law firm, if you can answer these questions well, when a law firm's, when you're interviewing of law firms, talking about there's only one client, just saying all these different things that can really help you. So because these are not necessarily these are reasons that that are many that are good, but yeah. So again, different firms have different needs. You have to understand if what the firm is doing or what it's like fits what you can deal with, and if it's a place where you feel like you can stay. So anytime you interview with a firm, it really should be a place where you convince the firm that this is a place I'd like to stay for the rest of my career. Also, hopefully should be. So interviewing with the firm, looking for those signals, being able to talk about all these different things. So right now I'm going to talk about, I think, probably the most important part of the presentation about interviews. And this information I'm covering, I'll just tell you kind of at the outset. So I try to prepare BCG candidates get interviews all day, and I always try to personally, if I can, prepare them for interviews if another recruiter is not doing it or I'm doing it myself. And typically what happens, just so you kind of understand the batting average, generally the people will not get 4 out of 5 jobs that they interview for. So you get 5 interviews. You're typically going to get 4. You get rejected by 4 to 5 of them, or 4 of them for every 5 interviews. Sometimes it's even higher. Sometimes you will go out on like 10 interviews and maybe get 1 job offer. Some will go out on 10 interviews and get no job offers. When I prepare people for interviews, typically, if I do it and I do a good enough job and it doesn't take a ton of time, it's like half hour to 45 minutes, then it's just completely reversed. 4 out of 5 of my interviews, that candidate that gets 4 interviews will often get 5 interviews will often get 4 offers. So there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot that people don't understand. So I hope you take some time to you write this down and understand what I'm talking about and take notes, because it's important. So the attorneys, when they're interviewing you, they're going to ask questions often about your work, or you will say things about yourself when they're interviewing you that make them confident in you, or don't make them confident in you. So here's some questions that law firms will ask, or if you give a good answer to, will help you. So one of the most important things is, how busy are you? So in every firm, there are associates and partners that are being given a lot of work. They're given work by people that do good work, are given a lot of work. And if you're given a lot of work, that means you're doing good work. So I worked in 2 very competitive law firms. The first one I worked at was Quinn Emanuel, and when I was there, I was on path to probably bill 3,000 hours a year, which is good. And I was billing those hours because people were giving me work because they were happy with the work that I did, and I was able to have some good relationships with partners that had a lot of work, and so I had a lot of work. But at the same time, there was a girl right next to me in the firm. She's very smart. She went to Columbia, and she was maybe getting 1,000 hours worth of work per year. So how busy you are is often a reflection of how good of an attorney you are. When law firms lay people off, there might be 20 people in a class or a class year, and there might be out of the 20, only 5 are busy, and the 5 that are busy are the ones that keep their jobs most of the time, not the 15 that aren't busy. So how busy you are in a law firm is always going to reflect how good you are oftentimes, because you wouldn't be getting a lot of work unless you were doing good work. Now there's exceptions to that. Sometimes you might be getting a lot of work and there's no one else to help you and that sort of thing. But how busy you are is a reflection often of how good an attorney you are. So if you're able to go into law firm interviews and talk about how busy you are and you're getting more work than anybody else, that's really, really good. That means that you're probably doing good work. So talking about that you're very, very busy is one of the smartest things anybody can do in an interview. And maybe you say, I'm the busiest associate in my class, or maybe you say things like that. Oftentimes, law firms will be interested in what partners you're working with. So if you're in a law firm and you're working for like a top rainmaker, like the person with the most business or someone that's very, very highly regarded, that's much different than maybe working with an income partner that doesn't really have anything going on, or you're working for other associates. So the quality of the partners you're working with, if they're known in the market, is very, very important, because you could be working on major matters, and that's also important when other people aren't getting those sort of assignments. So this happens in every firm. So people are hired, and then they start working, and partners are trying them out, and the best associates and the best people get the most work. So that's just how it works. And people that aren't doing the best work get the assignments that aren't the best. The partners that aren't the most important are working with them, not the most important partners. So that's very, very important. So you need to think about who you're working with. Partners, by the way, are also evaluated based on how busy they are. If you're a partner and you're very, very busy with your own clients, that's very, very good. So I talk to partners all day. Like every day I talk to a partner that doesn't have enough work, and they don't have enough clients, and they don't have enough work. So your ability to stay busy, just telling you, is like probably the most important characteristic that you need to carry throughout your career. Because if you don't have work, you die. So you have to always have work. You have to treat anybody that's giving you work, if they're a partner, whoever, associate, whatever, client, you have to treat everybody like a client, and you have to figure out work to be done, and you have to make sure you're billing as much as you can, and being busy. Because if you're not busy, that's a reflection of your work. And if you're working with the most important people in the firm, that's also a reflection of how good of an attorney you are. So you should always be trying to get more work. You should always be trying to work with the most important people. If you do that, and you're able to convince, tell your interviewers that's very, very good. People will ask what you're currently working on. So a lot of times law firms will have like major matters that everyone knows they're working on. And if you're not working on those major matters in your practice area, they may be concerned about that. Law firms will often ask you questions about, what you think you could improve on. So people will say the stupidest things. I had one guy, I couldn't believe it. He was losing his job at a large firm, and I placed him. But I asked him this, when I was preparing for interviews. I said, "What do you think you can improve on?" And he said, "I need to start using my legal secretary and the legal secretary in the next firm to proofread my work, because I made a lot of errors and people don't like that." That's not a good answer of what you could improve on. What you could improve on would be, things like, working, getting more insight in your practice area, refining my deposition skills, taking the lead on transactions, things like that. People will often ask you what you like most about what you're doing. So you should like what you're doing. If you're enthusiastic about your practice area and you're really, really excited about it, that's very, very good. So a lot of times people will go into interviews and they'll just kind of be bland, and they won't have any enthusiasm for what they're doing. So you have to talk about why you like what you're doing. If you are a litigator, you have to talk about, I like writing, I love arguing motions, I love I really like research, whatever. But you have to act like you really like what you're doing, and you have to connote that. If someone goes in an interview and they talk about what they're doing with a lot of enthusiasm, that's very, very good. If you were accused of some horrible crime that wasn't something that you'd actually done, and you had to hire a criminal attorney, you could hire one that didn't have any enthusiasm and was just kind of bland. Or if you had one that was just all fired up and really wanted to do a good job, and was finding all these angles and different things and outraged by your position, that would be the person you hire. So people want to hire people that are enthusiastic, working for the biggest clients. I talked about that. Sometimes people ask what else you've done in your practice area. So very, very good attorneys, and this is important for you to understand, very, very good attorneys, often from a very young age, like when they're just starting out as first-year attorneys, they will be very interested in what they're doing. They will write articles on LinkedIn. They'll post interesting links to things that they like on LinkedIn. They will go to different they'll go to different seminars and things and list it on there. They'll get special certifications. They want to do privacy law. They'll do all these different things that other people aren't doing. So a lot of people, once they go to law school and graduate, they just go to work in a firm and they're just kind of stagnant doing work there. So, what are you doing in your practice area? Because if you were hiring a doctor and you had brain cancer, if you found a doctor that was on all these committees doing this, he'd written all these papers, or she'd written all these papers about brain cancer, all these studies and things, and then you found another brain doctor that just said they were a brain doctor, you would probably want to hire the person that had a lot of enthusiasm for the practice area, because that looks good to clients, it looks good to firms, it shows commitment, and then also confidence, going to an interview and be confident. Sometimes people ask questions about things that they could do or could they do it, and you just say, maybe I haven't done this, but I'm a fast learner. I can pick things up. It's something that I really, really like to do. And some of these things, like I talked to someone yesterday that just hated what he was doing, and he was going on in interviews in his practice area to try to work for another firm because he was getting fired, and he just had no enthusiasm. So no one's going to hire someone with no enthusiasm. And then the other thing is references. So references are a big deal. So most law firms, by the way, if you get hired a top end low 100 law firm, most of them aren't going to ask for references. I think that they just take the quality of firm you're at. They realize you might have made mistakes, but if you had some stability there, they figure you're going to go there and do okay. But when they start checking references, references are very important. And the reason references are important is because if you had a couple different jobs and then you don't have references, then that means there's probably something wrong about your performance. So anybody that ever has problems with references, and a law firm will call people, typically what will happen is there'll be, a lot of times it's smaller law firms that want them. Sometimes it's a guy might have a law firm of like 10 attorneys or something, but these law firms often want references. And so when you have the references, you have to remember that every single person that you're working for or ever work for, you want them to speak very, very highly of you. And if they don't, that's a problem. So you always want to make sure you're trying to have good references. Every attorney you ever work for should hopefully provide good references. You should do the best job you can. You shouldn't make enemies. And so if people ask you what your reference would say about you, which most law firms won't ask that, but if they do, you have to come up with words like enthusiastic, great learner, a hard worker, all these sorts of things. And that's what you want your references to say about you. So just remember that everybody you ever work for is a reference. Even if they're not a reference for your current employer, they will talk about you positively in the legal market if you did a good job there. Now, one thing I will say that's kind of nice and is that most law firms will not give, large law firms typically will not give bad references. I had one woman, I may have told this story last week, but she was at a major AmLaw 100 law firm in New York, like one of the best, like one of the top 5 of them. And she was manic depressive and didn't take her medication or something, and had some like just incredibly crazy outbreak where she was like screaming in the halls and stuff at the firm. And literally, it's such a good firm. They were like, okay, we need to get her help, and didn't fire her. But she went and, I don't know, got medicated and get some help or whatever. And but then ended up leaving and told me this. And so I decided, well, I'm going to call this firm, talk to a couple of who she worked with for references. And the firm literally said nice things about her. They didn't say anything negative. They literally didn't bring any of this stuff up. So a lot of times, just it's kind of a funny thing. Like the best law firms typically won't say bad things about you. I've know lots of attorneys, and it's very, very common in the legal market for attorneys not to say negative things about other attorneys. So the better the firm, typically, the more likely they are not to say negative things about you. Oftentimes in smaller markets, people will say bad things, but typically the better firm you're at, the less likely they are to say bad things about you. It's almost like 2 people are talking about an attorney, and they know that there's some negative stuff in the background, but they won't say anything negative about the other attorney. This is how most attorneys work. But in smaller law firms, typically that's not the case as much, because I don't know why. So law firms will often ask you for work products. And so you have to be prepared to turn over work product, and the work product should be as good as it possibly can. They'll look for typos, they'll look for errors and things. They'll look for if you miss different cases and things. So look for that. So you have to always have good work product. They'll often ask you why you're not currently working. So you have to have good reasons for that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And so each answer that you give to these questions is really going to show how you can do. So not currently working. Again, you have to be very, very careful about that. You can't, so many people take time off or do things or get fired and aren't working. And it becomes very, very difficult for them to get jobs unless they have very good explanations. So you may be unemployed, and you have to think about that, because what happens when you're unemployed is if you're applying for a job and you're unemployed and someone that's gainfully employed is applying for the same job, the law firm is going to be much more likely to hire the person that's working as opposed to not working, because that reflects on there could be reasons that are negative. So you have to be very careful about that. Now, women go and have babies and things, and law firms don't hold that against them. Some different things can happen, but if you're not currently working, it can be a problem. I had a candidate not too long ago I won't say where it's in a southern state, and he on his resume, he said he had cancer and left a firm because of cancer. And he said that he had cancer, even the type of cancer on his resume. And I told him to, just say he was sick or whatever. But when I started working with him, I started hearing from law firms when he was getting interviews, he was showing up drunk, or in the middle of the day, or at least appearing drunk. And so law firms a lot of times that was probably really why he wasn't working. So you have to have good reasons for everything. And not working, talk a little bit about that later, but you have to have good reasons for that. You can say the law firm didn't have any more work in my practice area, or there were the firm couldn't afford, all sorts of things. But you have to have good reasons. So again, I talked a little bit about being busy, but this is really the most reliable indicator of how, if you're doing a good job. So you have to look like the busiest attorney. And if you're in a law firm, you shouldn't just be waiting for assignments. You should figure out how to get work. You should be networking with the people that have work. You should be finding additional work that can be done when you get assignments. And this is what's most important, because even as a partner, now you have to be busy. So the ability to get work from others has a lot to do with your initiative, your reputation, your professional maturity. And a lot of times people will just claim there's not enough work, but you should always be trying to get work. And the best attorneys will often create their own opportunities. If there's they'll get work from outside, even as associates, by writing articles and giving presentations and all sorts of things. So if you have the ability to stay busy, that's very, very important. Anybody that's busy is a good hire. And sometimes people will sit there idle and wait for instructions or complain about the lack of work. People that just sit around their office waiting for work, that's not good. The inability to generate work can really signal a lot of deeper problems and all sorts of things. I was at a firm, the second firm I was at, Dewey Ballantyne, which is no longer in existence. There was a guy that was he was senior. It was like maybe 10 years out of law school. And the law firm was going through a very, very slow period in litigation. And it was kind of sad. Like, one of his children had some serious handicap and needed people to help at the house and things, and so he really needed to work, and he didn't want to lose his job. And again, it's very, very difficult if you're like a 10th year litigator to move firms often. It's just that practice here can be tough. And he needed to make a lot of money, which this firm paid. And so instead of just sitting there with no work, he went around and figured out, he talked to the managing partner of the firm, he did all these things. And he found all of these unpaid bills that clients hadn't paid bills. And so all of a sudden he decided he was going to spend all his time on this because he didn't have enough work. And so he started suing all these clients and brought in like millions of dollars into the firm by doing that. And so it became very valuable. And he was able to seek out and figure out how to do work. So having work and staying busy, no matter what it is very, very important. And there's in every firm, there's people that manage to stay busy and there's not. So you have to have good relationships and you have to really do good at that. And then again, I talked about the partners you're working with. That's very important. Again, if you're an associate, you need to do everything you possibly can to work with the partners that have business and are working on important matters. The reason you want to work with partners that have business is because they will have power to elevate you to be a partner and all sorts of things. I know in every major law firm, every major AmLaw 100 law firm, there are people with no business that are making seven-figure salaries, $1 million, $2 million a year, no business, have never had any business. But those people were able to form relationships with partners that had a lot of business. And so those partners wanted to keep them around. Those partners wanted to elevate them. So those people, I'm just telling you, go to AmLaw 100 law firm and you align yourself with the right people. If you align yourself with someone who's very, very powerful, that person can help you. And that's the difference between, a 10th or 12th year associate that's asked to leave and another one that's elevated. Someone with a lot of business can completely take your career so far that you would never get on your own. So understanding the people that you work with or working with the best people is something that the law firms ask. The best attorneys are always working with the top partners because they're giving the most work. And then some people are just working on different short-term assignments and not important things. And that is something that law firms may ask. And if you can give an answer that you're working with the most important people, that's important. Again, what you're working on, I talked about that a little bit earlier. You want to try to work on the highest profile matters and things in your firm. You want to get staffed in the highest profile matters. You want to be the one that's chosen to do them. And if you are, that's very good. In firms, again, we will give the most important matters to the best attorneys. Sometimes, people will come from well-known firms, but they'll only be working on minor profile matters, and that can be a warning sign. So it means they're not part of the top tier group. I had a candidate years ago. This is like 20 years ago, and he'd gotten a job at Sullivan and Cromwell, which again is such a great firm. I mean, it's one of the like Dak, Cravath, and Wachtell are just some of the top firms in the world. Literally, I think in the top 5 in terms of how good they are in the country. And he got in this job at Sullivan Cromwell, and he was asked to. He wasn't like the top person in his class, and so he was sent to do literally a document review in some place in the Midwest or North Dakota or something. And they literally had him do that because he wasn't like one of their top performers. He was there for like 3 years. And when that doc review was over, I'm sure it was a major doc review and things that he supervised, and the law firm wanted. Sullivan Crown was interesting. I had another candidate there that was working on some big Volkswagen matter, and Volkswagen wanted these high-paid attorneys, associates, to do kind of very menial work. But anyway, he was in this document review. He got back from the document review, and they were just like, "We don't have anything for you to do." And he went out and interviewed with firms, and he didn't have any experience. And people were like, "What did you work on?" And he wasn't working anything important. So, the more critical work you're given has a lot to do. So you want to try to work, on the most sophisticated work. Someone that's working matters. I mean, it's obviously, a better person. Sometimes law firms, a second-year associate may be asked to go to trial where everyone else is just sitting there doing discovery in their class. And sometimes, younger attorneys will be leading teams to do, major transactions. And so that often reveals a lot. So law firms will distribute work to the people that have the most talent. So these are all questions that law firms will ask, but a lot of times they won't. So if they're kind of looking at that, they're looking at an attorney, they will, if you give the right answers to that, I'm working with the most important partners, I have a lot of work and things, that's going to help you. Asking what you could improve on is not, necessarily something that all law firms will ask, but if you bring it up, that's going to help you if you answer it the right way. So again, I talked to you about the guy having paralegals and legal secretaries. I talked about people saying that they'd be better asking for more assignments. And these sort of things can, be red flags. So other people will come in and they'll say, I want to spend more time in business development, or I wanted to, improve my deposition skills, or I want to work on larger transactions. So this sort of responses can show a lot of initiative, ambition, and commitment to become a better attorney. Now, this point, by the way, may not seem at first glance that important, but this is one of the things when I make placements. I would say that a high number of them, like 60 to 70%, the person when they're going into interview, they're portraying themselves and this job as sort of is something that's an improvement. It gives them the ability to finally work on the type of transactions they want, or to work on to get to go to trial, or to work on a certain type of practice area more in depth. And so law firms want to hire people where it looks like they're moving up. So even if you're moving to a smaller firm from a large firm, you might say, I want to work on smaller clients so I can develop business, or I want to get more, I want to get more, I don't know, better responsibility, or all these different sorts of things. So law firms want to hire people where it looks like they're moving up to some extent. So those are some good answers, I guess. But people, again, that do things outside of their practice area, outside of the firm, like reading courses, business development stuff, show a lot of commitment as well. People that are doing professional development and taking things seriously. It demonstrates focus, initiative, and all this sorts of stuff. So if you're growth oriented, and law firms can pick that up, then you're much, much more likely to do well. And again, I see this all the time. I see so many attorneys that aren't growth oriented, like they just go into interviews and there's nothing about what they want to improve. There's nothing about high degree of enthusiasm for the practice area. And so if you have that and you look like someone that's very much like that, you're going to do much better. And there's a lot of attorneys that never stop improving, and others plateau earlier in their careers. One of the more successful attorneys that I know, he started off at a small law firm because he'd gone to a top law school. He'd worked in a firm that wasn't that great in his summer. He didn't have a lot of enthusiasm for it, so he didn't get an offer. Then he took the bar, he failed it, and he ended up getting a job at a small law firm. But he became incredibly motivated about this. So some people, bad things will happen to them, and they'll just get sad and they'll be like, feel sorry for themselves. Other people, bad things will happen to them, and they will use it as rocket fuel. So I'm telling you, like, instead of getting sad if something bad happens to you, you should get mad. And if you get mad, is what this guy did. He decided he wasn't going to let any of this stuff hold him back, and he was going to do everything he possibly could to become the best attorney he could, and to do everything he needed to do to be successful. And he started off at a small firm. He got really, really good experience, and then he went to a larger firm because he told that firm that the next firm that he wanted to work on larger matters, and he wanted to do this and he wanted to do that, and he felt limited by the size of the clients. He did that with a larger firm, and within 7 or 8 years, he was at one of the top 10 law firms, or maybe top 15 law firms in the United States in terms of its prestige. I would say the top 10. And not only that, but along the way, he was networking and building clients. And he was very interested in this branch of law, which I think was like privacy law. And he'd been cutting out articles and reading articles and creating all these different files, and had all these file cabinets full of information about it, folders on his computer, and just very, very enthusiastic. And then that is amazing. So very few people are like that. Like, he kept improving. And so law firms, from the small law firm to the medium-sized law firm to the larger law firm to finally one of the top law firms, saw that. And that's very, very attractive to firms. People that want to improve and are very motivated, and very few people are. And then again, what do you like most about what you're doing? I don't know why the like is not capitalized, but again, having a lot of enthusiasm for what you do. So that energy and stuff, that law firms, that clients want that. Employers want that. And not everybody, has that, and that's important. So talking about how you like learning your practice area, finding solutions that other people don't see, really helping clients and doing all these great things. Most good doctors and good attorneys, like there's always something about whatever they're doing that appeals to them. I was out to dinner with this woman that was a psychiatrist recently, and single. Anyway, so I was kind of interested. I was talking to her about how she got into psychiatry, and she'd been doing all these different things. I think she'd done a residency or something I don't know, like whatever it was. Oh, it was in dermatology, which is like the hardest residency you possibly can get, because everybody wants to be a dermatologist because the hours are good, the pay is good. It's actually more competitive than surgery, to being a surgeon, you can believe it. But anyway, so she had this great residency because she was really top performer in medical school. And she, at some point, like, maybe it was an internship or whatever. Maybe it wasn't a resident, but she'd gotten a residency. And at some point, she'd gone into she'd been working in a hospital or in some small market and somewhere in middle America, and started seeing all these people coming in with these serious psychological problems. And she realized that she figured out how to come up with different concoctions of medication and everything to change the course of their life. And so she was got extremely passionate about this, and then didn't do this dermatology thing, even though she was taught, because she realized that if she gave certain people that had all these different psychological problems a certain mix of medications, then she could change their life, like schizophrenics or manic depressives and things. And this is just an aside, if anybody has these sorts of issues, I mean, you should always seek out someone that like this, that can help you, because you may not, there's people that are very, very passionate about it. And so she became a very, very successful psychiatrist, and charges like, I don't know, $1,200 an hour or something. And people seek her out because she gets results that other people can't. So it's the same thing with being a lawyer. If you are talking to people and you're enthusiastic and you have that sort of insight, and you talk about how you save clients millions of dollars, you did all these things, you won these trials, it can be good. And then again, I talked about the clients you're working for. So that's important. So anybody that's working, if you're working on best clients the firm has, that's a good sign. And I don't know that I need to go into much more detail about this, but again, people that aren't working on the most important matters and are just kind of doing busy work at a firm that's not good. And in every firm, there are people like that. In large law firms, there's people that are sought out to work on the most important matters, and there's people that partners don't like, or maybe they're a partner and clients it just depends. I mean, a partner with large clients is much more attractive than one with smaller ones. An associate working on large clients is much more attractive than ones that aren't. I always recommend that everybody do this. If you beef up your resume in your practice area, regardless of what your practice area is, you're on committees, you're on, some people teach at law schools. I had a guy recently that was taught at law school, and that was kind of interesting. He was a solo practitioner, but he was teaching in his practice area. He'd never worked in a law firm, but he had all these things. He'd written articles and taught in this law school as a adjunct professor, and that looked very good. And you got a lot of interviews when someone without that wouldn't. So having a lot of things on your resume and stuff that talk about how engaged you are with your practice area, this is huge. And again, if you were a law firm and you were interviewing someone, and that one person had a lot of things on their resume that were related to their practice area and showed a lot of enthusiasm, papers and committees and going to conferences and all this sort of thing, that's a much more attractive hire than someone that isn't. And those are the type of people also that are likely to get business. And but you would want someone that was enthusiastic and representing you. I mean, helping you if you were getting accused of a crime or whatever. And again, then there's also confidence. I don't need to talk too much about that, but attorneys need to be confident, and you need to be able to ask for help when needed, but you need to be confident. And again, if you were going to a doctor and a doctor wasn't confident, you wouldn't like that. If you were hiring an attorney for yourself, and the attorney wasn't competent or confident. You wouldn't like that. So having confidence is important. People want people to take initiative. People want people that don't have to ask for a lot of hand-holding. People like that. So people want to work with people that are confident. And again, if you're not confident, then that can be a problem. And again, I an interesting thing happened about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I had an attorney working for me, but I wanted to hire a first year attorney to work with me. And so I contacted UCLA, and UCLA sent me the resumes. I contacted them maybe in like October or something. So I was interviewing people from the school that hadn't gotten jobs. And I mean, this is an interesting thing I just want to make everyone aware of, because how important this is. So I was interviewing people that hadn't gotten jobs, that were now looking for their first law firm job after because they hadn't gotten jobs when they were at UCLA, which is a great law school. And I remember I interviewed like 7 or 8 people, and all those 7 or 8 people that hadn't gotten jobs, and this was actually during a really good legal market, all those 7 or 8 people that hadn't gotten jobs had no confidence. Their handshakes were bad. They didn't make eye contact. They just, and a lot of them were very good students. I remember one guy was at the very top of his class in law review and everything, but no confidence. And so you have to have confidence. If you don't have confidence, then that's a problem. I was working with an attorney on Monday, and he, another one of these people that had a really bad experience in his last firm, and just felt completely, broken down and no confidence. And he was going to interviews and not doing well. And he's not going to get a job until he has confidence. And this happens to older attorneys. They lack confidence, and they're insecure. And so you have to have confidence. Just think about what you would want from your attorney. You would want something with confidence. So you have to really be confident. If you have confidence, that makes people like want to work with you. It makes partners want to work with you. It wants clients wanted to work with you. And you can't think about getting a client. You can't get a client as an attorney if you don't have confidence. So this is it's extremely important. And, when I find people that I'm preparing and talking to about their interviews and things, I always do whatever I can to build them up and tell them what's good about them and why there would be a good hire, and why they shouldn't take whatever happened to them or whatever mistakes they made at their last firm, and allow that to push them down. And again, this is something that happens a lot, that people will join large law firms or any law firm out of law school and just have a horrible experience. Maybe they're working with a bad partner. Maybe their work is, they don't do work of the quality that they need to. They're isolated, they're fired, all these things happen. And you have to pick yourself up, and you have to be confident. If you don't do that, no one's going to want to hire you. People want to hire people that are confident. You can't be overly confident and not deliver, but you have to have confidence. And I don't, it's just, this is something that's very sad. It holds back senior attorneys, it holds back junior attorneys, it holds back mid-level attorneys. You have to write off whatever bad things that have happened to you. You have to forget that most attorneys get fired at least once in their career. So almost all of them. I mean, it's very rare for an attorney not to get fired. So almost everyone gets fired, or they're told to leave, or whatever happens. And you can't take that as like a sign that everything's bad about you. That'd be like, having a bad relationship with a man or a woman, and then things going south after, I don't know, 3 years, and then thinking you'll never meet someone again. Or you can't do that. People want people that are confident. References, I talked a little bit about that. The big point I want you to understand, and it's extremely important, is wherever you work, you don't want to go in there and have a bad attitude and make people not like you. You want to conduct yourself a class, to do the best job you can, and really to try to get good references. And so, people ask you about your references, people ask you for references. And those references, again, they could follow you, throughout your career. So you need to be very, very careful. Now, you may not have good references. Not everybody's going to ask you for references, but being able to try your hardest wherever you go, to try to be, not get involved in drama, not say bad things about the firm and all this sort of thing, are important. And if you want people to say good things about you. I mean, it's no different. So anytime you're working for someone else that's giving you work, like that person is going to either say good things about you when or if you're not working with them anymore, will say bad things about you. So one thing that kind of happens, it happens to attorneys. Like attorneys will do a very bad job on something. Or they'll upset a client and they'll have like major problems. So that person is not going to be a good reference. If they do that enough, then they're going to have a very bad reputation and people aren't going to hire them. Companies won't hire them. People will learn about it. So you have to try to get good references from anybody you work for. Clients. I ran when I was young. I did it from the time I was 19 or 18 to 27. I had a asphalt business in Detroit, and Detroit is not a huge market. And I did work in one of the main areas I worked in was Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which is it's a kind of not a huge area. It's like maybe 25,000 people, but again, there's that everyone kind of sort of knows each other. And so I would go out and I would do work for people. And if anybody was unhappy with it, I would always make sure I fixed it. And then I would do things like over the top. Like I would come back the next year and I would tell them, I'm not going to charge you this year because you had problems last year. And I would do that sort of thing with clients. I had one woman who I showed up to talk to her about going door to door about doing her work for her. And she said, well, I don't have any money because my husband died this year. And she'd been a client of mine for like 5 years or something like that. And I said, don't worry about it. I'll do it for free. And I did it for free. And I came back the next year and did it for free too. And she told everyone in the whole neighborhood about it. And she was connected about all this stuff I did. And then not only was she a good reference, but people learned about the fact that I, was a nice person that stood behind my work. So you want to have a good energy in whatever you're doing. You want to have the best references, and you want to show that you're someone that added a lot of value. And your references are important. And your clients, if you do a good job for them, they're going to hire you again, or they're going to like you, or they're going to talk to you about it. And same thing with firms. And so you need to really be in a position where you have a good reputation, and that's important. And if you can get good references. Now, I told you this earlier, but a lot of times firms they'll call the HR department, they'll confirm your dates of employment and things like that. Most large law firms do not ask for references, but just having a very good reputation in the legal community is extremely important. There was a woman that I hired to work at BCG, and she was very smart. She went to like Penn or something, and I hired her to be a recruiter here. But she had worked at Latham and Watkins or something for 7 years, and when she was there, she was very hardworking. And when she left, they said, you come back at any time. And when I hired her, attorneys at other firms were telling me, because they knew she worked for in Washington, D.C., like what a great attorney this one was. I mean, because they knew about it, and the firm talked about it. And it's just, having those kind of references are important. So literally her positive work ethic and things at a firm, I learned about it even though she was hired as a recruiter. So, peer-to-peer conversations, if you did a really good job at a firm, a lot of times if you're interviewing, maybe you've been at one firm and then you went to another firm and then you're at your third firm. The third firm may call the first firm, a partner there, and ask them what kind of work you did. Sometimes you're just kind of off the record calls that you may not even be aware of. And so if you have very, very good references from them, they can help you. I had a guy who was very sad. He was in Madison, Wisconsin, and he was hired. He'd been trying to get a job for a while. He'd been unemployed for like a year, and he was a patent attorney, and he had a great background. And he was unemployed, and I don't even remember why he was unemployed. but I ended up placing him at one of the largest firms in Madison, like one of the 5 largest firms. And he got there, and he was there for like a month. And the firm that he'd worked at before saw that he was at this firm and called the other firm. And because he'd had such bad references, or he'd done such bad work there, called the other firm and told them all about this, and then they fired him. It was just, to me, it was amazing. I mean, I couldn't believe how that happened, but it happened. And so this sort of stuff can follow you. So you try to have the best references you can. Work product, I talked about that a little bit earlier. A lot of firms will ask for that. I told you some of the rules, that you need to follow with that are important. But I'm not going to go too much to detail about that. So I don't think that's that important. But again, whatever work product you're turning in, I see people all the time not getting jobs after someone reviews a writing sample or something. So that obviously is something that can hurt you. So you have to have the best samples you can. And oftentimes, if you have to turn a writing sample or something like that, filing, showing briefs that you file in court that are analytical and stuff in nature can be good. Sometimes people just ask for, something else, but you have to, you want to make sure you have good writing samples, and that can help you. Okay, this is the big one. So unemployed, why aren't you working? So this is extremely difficult. If you're unemployed, this is one of the toughest questions to address in an interview. And most law firms will look at unemployment as a huge red flag, because again, I told you earlier that one of the most important things for an attorney is to always have access to work, always be working. And if you have any periods where there's not that work coming in, that's not good. And it's unfortunate to say, but pretty much from the time you graduate from law school and start your first job, you should constantly have access to work. You should never run out of work to do. And if you run out of work to do and you're unemployed, that's a problem. So you obviously, if you're unemployed, you have to have, some sort of reason that you can give that doesn't sound bad. So people become unemployed for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's personality conflicts. A lot of times it's performance issues. A lot of times it's cultural in nature. The person may not fit into the culture, may not get work. Sometimes there's just not enough work in the practice areas. A lot of times people will get burned out and want a sabbatical, which isn't good. Other times people will have illnesses in their family and stuff and take time off. Sometimes people will have health problems. And, if law firms hiring someone, like the problem with this burnout, family issues, I mean, those two ones are big. The reason law firms don't like that and why those aren't good reasons a lot of times is because, first of all, if you're an attorney and you're representing a client, and then all of a sudden you tell the client, I'm burned out, I want to do something, I need to take time off, that client's going to go elsewhere. So if you're working for a law firm and you're burned out, that's your client, and that's not good. If you have family issues and you're unable to manage those at the same time and have to not work, that's not good. If you have health problems, I hate to say it, but people come up with health problems, and people do have health problems. I mean, I'm not in any sense of the word like saying that's not something that happens to a lot of people and that it's a bad thing necessarily. But if you're a law firm and you're hiring someone, would you want to hire someone that has all these health problems or someone that doesn't? So you need to figure out how to do that. People lose jobs because of poor quality work. A lot of people, it's also common, will lose jobs due to substance abuse issues, and that's actually more common than you can believe. Like there's attorneys that move frequently, every year or two. They get into a firm, the firm just figures out they have problems with drugs or alcohol or something, and then they lose their job and they go to another one. The same thing happens. Sometimes people have a bad attitude. So people are evaluating that when they're looking at you, and you have to be resilient and move beyond setbacks and learn from them and come up usually with a pretty good narrative of why you're unemployed. And there's some markets like New York City, where there's like so many attorneys, or Washington, DC, that anytime a firm has an opening, there's tons of people that potentially could do that job. And so so the law firms will look at the people that are employed versus unemployed, and you're too much of a risk if you're unemployed. So that's a problem. And so you need to have a good reason that you're unemployed. And so the most of the times the reason has to be circumstantial. When you're in a firm, there's not enough work, or things like your entire practice group moved to another firm and there was no work. But even when that happens, a lot of times the firm will ask that's interviewing you, well, why didn't they take you? I had that happen recently, and a guy didn't get a job because of it. Sometimes you could say that they laid a bunch of people off my practice group, which still isn't good, but it's better. A lot of times, when you're unemployed, sometimes one of the smartest things to do is often relocate to where you're from. So maybe you grew up in, I know I had one woman that was in Chicago and she lost her job. And so I told her, okay, you can apply to other big firms in Chicago. But what I also would recommend doing is applying to firms in Seattle, because you're from Seattle, you grew up in Seattle. And if you do that, you can tell the firms in Seattle why, I quit my job to move to Seattle. And that actually worked. So she was able to get a job with a very good firm in Seattle, where she wasn't able to do the same thing in Chicago because she was unemployed. So that can be helpful. And so anything you can do to, handle or, to overcome unemployment is good. A lot of times you might have to move to a smaller firm, but you really do want to do whatever you can to stay employed until you get your next position. Because again, law firms will compare people employed to unemployed, and that can be an issue. If you have extended periods of unemployment, that can be an issue. So you always want to do whatever you can to stay employed, not quit jobs. Get a job before you quit. Do your best to stay wherever you're at. Again, I had a guy that's so stupid. He went. I had one guy that went to a firm, and he told them that he didn't want to do a certain. This is recently, past couple months, and he told them that he didn't want to do a certain type of work that they hired him for. And so they said, well, that's all we have, and that's what we hired you for. And he said, well, I don't want to do it. So they ended up letting him go. And so that's just, he should have stayed like employed and tried to find a job before he did that. And then business is important. This is just something to think about. If you want to stay in a law firm long term, most of the time you're going to need to be able to develop business. I mean, I place people all the time that are 10, 20 years out of law school or 30 years out of law school that don't have business. I mean, it's definitely possible to get positions without business, but in most cases, if you're trying to get a job in a law firm and you're senior, the law firms are going to, they're often going to want business. Now, law firms do need worker bees and things in different practice areas, but most law firms, when you get senior, are going to expect business. So you need to think about that. You need to think about like how you're positioning yourself with business. If you're making efforts in that direction, what's happening. And, there's all sorts of reasons people give for not having business often, but you really should be doing whatever you can to get business, because that's something that law firms take very seriously. It's something that every attorney, needs to work on. So oftentimes people move to smaller firms where they can generate more business. Sometimes they'll move to larger firms that has a better brand so they can generate more business. But I just, this is something that should be in the back of every attorney's mind from the time you're in law school to the time you start work. If you can get close to partners, a lot of business, that can help you. But at the same time, you're going to have the most success when you get into a position where you have business, or you at least have some sort of plan for business. When law firms are interviewing you, by the way, and if you're a partner, by the way, that's all they're asking. That's all they care about. Most firms are just like, how much business does the person have? And whatever I say, they will respond most of the time, the person has enough business, no thank you. And so it's very, very consistent. Law firms most of them are not interested in people with business. Even if they are interested in people with business, even if you do have business, they want to see like in business increasing over time. If you're getting more and more work, so maybe last year you had 500,000, the next year you have 650, and the next year you have 800,000. Like anybody that has an upward trajectory, that looks very good for law firms. And so law firms, when they're interviewing partners, are and this is something I'm sure the majority of people on this aren't partners with business, but they're always going to look at your fees, all the sorts that you're charging, your billing rates, and what you're doing and how it's increasing. And this is attorneys are evaluated when you get like beyond 10 or 11 years of experience, you're essentially evaluated as a business. And so law firms that are interviewing are going to say, is this a good business for us to merge with this? Is it good for us to merge this attorney's business with our firm? Essentially, that's what they're asking. And so what that means is they're just looking at you as a business, and is this a business that we want? And if you have, this is how law firms function. They can't function without partners with business. So that's all they're for. A law firm is essentially there to provide associates and paralegals and office space and a brand and stuff to an attorney with business. So if you don't have business, then you're essentially it becomes very, very difficult. I mean, one of the nice things about being an attorney is just that as you mature into the profession, or whatever, you have the ability to stop being a worker bee and to actually start running your own business, and then to merge your business with law firms or whatever it is, but you can control your income. So again, these are sort of the questions about the job. I mean, can you do the work? Everything you present, your experience, the way you answer questions, and all this stuff is going to will impact how you can get a job. Your pedigree is going to determine earlier in your career what types of firms you can get into, the quality of firm, commitment, and all this stuff is very, very important. And you have to understand, like, this is all these things I talked about today are really, I think, some of the most important things you can understand. I've talked to you about your resume, how your resume needs to look focused, how law firms are looking for that. I talked to you about the importance of always having work. I talked to you about how to make your resume focus, for example, on a practice area, how to have stability and stay someplace for the long term, how to position yourself as someone that's upwardly mobile no matter what you're doing, how to go to a firm that matches your skill set and what you're doing. I mean, all these things are huge. And this has been a lot of information in this presentation, but and I kind of wish it was a little bit better organized. But at the same time, everything I've talked about today is essentially, I commend you for watching this, is essentially everything you need to know to have a good career in a law firm and to have stability. And again, I talk to these attorneys all day that are just, they've gone to good law schools, or and they don't understand these rules, and they just kind of approach the career without sort of this roadmap. So it's very, very smart people that watch this webinar, and what you learned today could change the direction of your career in life. I mean, you just need to, all these things, working for people that have a lot of work, looking, always having work, like so much stuff was covered today. And I hope like that you took some notes and, really were able to get a lot out of this, because it can change the direction of your career, confidence, all these things. And if you can become that type of attorney, you're going to have commitment, like staying in place a long time. You're going to do much better. And again, most attorneys do not understand these rules. And because of that, I would say that more than half of the attorneys in the country are underemployed, are not making as much money as they could, are unhappy, are making bad career decisions that have holding them back, all these things, and just not doing a good job with the people that they work for, and having bad references. All these things are just something that, if you learn these things and you understand them, can change the direction of life. And it's actually never too late. I mean, it's not, even if you're in like your early 50s or whatever, you can still like take a lot of this information and learn from it and improve. And then always in the back of your mind, if you want to work in a law firm, how do I always have access to work? Do I have powerful partners that are going to support me throughout my career and give me work? Or am I able to bring in clients to have access to work? Always have access to work. And if you run out of access to work, that's kind of the end. And it happens to a lot of people. It happens to people in big firms. It happens to all sorts of people. So you always want to have access to work. I'll just give you like one final thing because this is kind of a just something that talks a little bit about what I do at BCG and what my how I believe that people should conduct their job searches. So people will often, when they do a job search, they will look at only they'll only want to apply to a few jobs or something. Maybe they're employed, maybe they're unemployed, maybe they'll want to apply to a few jobs that look like a perfect match for their skills and abilities. But in every legal market, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in Los Angeles, there might be 8,000 law firms. If you're in New York, there might be 10,000 law firms. If you're in Chicago, there might be 5,000. Houston, 5,000. I mean, there's so many different places that people could work, and because of not really marketing yourself to enough places, people often don't get jobs, and they run out of access to work. So if you're in a position where you don't have enough work, or you're losing your job, or you're even unhappy, like you should be looking at as many uh, firms without even openings and applying to them as you possibly can that do what you do. You should also be looking at as many markets as you can. So, and I hate this. I mean, so many people run out of access to work, and they run out of access to work for so many different reasons. But it's just basically like once you run out of access to work, um, you either have to find another job or your career ends. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for attorneys to develop business, because then they always have work. It's just incredibly important. You need to, people can't undermarket themselves. And it's very, very difficult for a lot of people to find jobs for whatever reason. And so you need to find someone that will hire you. And there always is. Like, I don't care um, if you are at a top law firm and having a hard time finding a job. I don't care if you're unemployed and didn't go to good law school. There's always people that will hire you, but you have to look at a lot of times multiple markets, multiple firms, and that's really something that, I mean, I see every day. I get people interviews at BCG that thought it was over, like they couldn't get a job or whatever. They never would find a firm that they were happy at, or they were unemployed or whatever. But those people are very, very aggressive in seeking out work. And then the best people are often, always the ones that try to make their resume focused and that have confidence and learn about this, but go all out getting work. I mean, it's crazy. Like I talked to a woman last night, like 5 o'clock, and she'd been unemployed for 6 months, and she'd just been applying to a job here and a job there, and hadn't gotten anything, and didn't understand that she was in Ventura County, which is it's outside of Los Angeles County, and didn't understand that there were probably 300 places that she could work within 20 minutes of her house. And she's been applying to all these jobs all over. Got an interview in a firm in like downtown Los Angeles, but taken her like an hour and a half each way. So people don't understand that there's work everywhere, and there's always work. And so, but if you stop working, you lose access to work, you're gonna be in trouble. So I keep making this point because it's just so important, and in your career. So we'll take a quick break just for like a minute or two, and then when I come back, we'll do questions. You can ask questions about anything. It doesn't have to be about this webinar. I'm sure I may have expose some issues or weak points in your background when we talk today, but I will answer questions about anything related to your career. And I would encourage you to really ask as many questions as you have, because that's very helpful, not only for you, but for people who are on the webinar, and then people that may watch the questions and answers and things that we cover today later. So and questions are one of my favorite parts of the week, because sometimes I learn about situations I've never heard about and that sort of thing. So I'll be back in a minute, and then when I come back, we'll go to questions. Thanks. All right, good questions. 1 second. All right, give me 1 second. And by the way, thanks in advance for everyone who's asked questions so far. It's just very, very helpful for others here. And yeah, great. And if you anybody also, if you have follow-up questions after I ask a question, I'm happy to answer those too. Okay, this question. This is a funny question. I work in personal injury, and a fair amount of my cases are motor vehicle accidents. If I stay for 10 years, so if I stay for 10 years, people don't even drive anymore. What will I do? Any advice? That's kind of a funny question, but most personal injury, I mean, that those skills of doing auto accidents are transferable to slip and falls, or transferable to mass torts and that sort of thing. Anybody, by the way, that does any form, there are people you can also you can go into employment. There's just all sorts of things that a personal injury attorney can do. But if you're a personal injury attorney, I mean, that by the way is one of the best practice areas. I mean, some of the richest and happiest attorneys that I know are actually personal injury attorneys. And there's all sorts of different personal injury you can do. You can do again, you can do motor vehicle accidents, you can do slip and falls, you can do employments, you can do any type of personal injury. There's multiple types of personal injury. I think personal injury attorneys can always learn and go into other personal injury related areas. Personal injury is also interesting because if you're in it or you're thinking about going in it, there's all these different places where personal injury attorneys will post cases and saying, hey, I'll give you this case if you give me 30% of the recovery and stuff. There's always plenty of work in personal injury. And personal injury, I think I like that practice here. I've seen a lot of attorneys from top law firms even do it. The reason I like it is a lot of it is just related to marketing, like bringing in the cases, because probably at most personal injury firms, like 97% of the cases settle. So the personal injury attorney will file the case and then they'll kind of push it along, and then the insurance company will offer one settlement, they won't take it, and then we'll offer another one, and they won't take it, and then they'll eventually get a certain type of settlement. So personal injury is a great practice area because most of it is just related to marketing and bringing in the client. And people get very, very good at settlements and can do well, but it's you can also do mass torts. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do with personal injury, which is just awesome. Let me see. Okay. How can you best market yourself in a completely new practice area? My area is niche, and positions in it are limited remotely and in my state. So if you're in a completely new practice area, you can certainly find a position, but at the same time, you have to put yourself in the shoes of any employer that's interviewing you. So if there's an opening for someone in a certain practice area, and you apply and you don't have experience in that practice area, even if it's in another state, they're obviously going to hire the person that has experience in that practice area compared to you. So what do you do? So the best way of doing it, I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can do it. But the thing that attorneys do that's often the most successful in doing that is they proactively reach out to smaller law firms, either in their market that do it, that probably don't get a lot of applications, or they reach out to people, firms in smaller markets that don't get attorneys of that caliber. All sorts of things that you can do. So that's one thing that people do, and I've seen people be successful doing that. I had one woman that was a patent attorney in Palo Alto and had an engineering background, and for whatever reason wanted to do environmental law, which kind of made no sense because she didn't have anything in her background. But she was very, very passionate about it. And she was able to get a position at a middle market firm in Sacramento doing it by calling the firm, talking to them, explaining her interest, calling partners there. I mean, doing, just very, very proactive. And I think she went and worked at that firm. And I think she became a partner there actually. And so you can do it. It's just you have to, law firms have to have a reason to hire you as compared to someone else. So if you have better qualifications, you're trying to go to a smaller market, you have a lot of interest in it, that can do it. I would, if I'm trying to go into another practice area, you should do everything you can to familiarize yourself with it, to look good on paper, like someone that's very committed to it. And if you're able to do that, then you can, often get positions, but it's not easy to do. So you typically will have to work in a smaller firm or a smaller market. The other thing you do too is you get involved in associations and things that do that, and you network with attorneys there, and you tell them your interest and people believe you, then that can often work as well. So, but it's very, very difficult if you don't have experience in a practice area to compete against attorneys that do have experience of their jobs. The other thing you can do too is you can also, if you're trying to work in a new practice area, there's often, in every market, there's thousands of people that in most markets that do, if it's a large market, like in a top 50 US city, there's going to be tons and tons of people that are in their practice area, like solo practitioners, a huge number of people like to do better in that practice area. So let's show you an example, which I hope helps everyone. I may kind of do this example a lot of times in these webinars, but let's say, let's see, top largest cities in California. So just these are kind of rankings of cities in California, like here in California. So these are like the largest cities. Most people that are looking for jobs will always apply to firms in the largest cities. So they'll want to work in Los Angeles, or they'll want to work in San Diego, something like that. But say you wanted to go into bankruptcy. So if you wanted to go into bankruptcy in Los Angeles, I'll just show you here, bankruptcy attorneys. And say you didn't do that. So you're going to get kind of all these results. So these are businesses that do it. These are rankings of bankruptcy attorneys, just kind of all these different lists and rankings. So, but the idea being that if you wanted to work in Los Angeles doing bankruptcy, there are literally pages and pages of people that do bankruptcy. So if I was trying to get a bankruptcy job in Los Angeles, and it's really what I wanted to do, here I am on like page 2 or 3, and the attorney group professional things right here. Employment, Jesus, DUI, bankruptcy. So this is a firm that probably isn't getting any unsolicited applications. They have all these different offices. You can email them and say you have an interest in doing bankruptcy. And if you were to do this with all of these bankruptcy firms, and you were to apply to all of them, you would probably have a pretty good chance of getting something, even if you weren't doing bankruptcy, because they're not getting unsolicited applications. And if you have a cover letter that explains your interest in bankruptcy, and you reach out to them and you contact, the right people in the firm, like this woman, probably not getting a lot of applications for people to work for her. This woman, I guarantee you, there's people like this all over that don't have anybody applying to them, that don't know how to find attorneys, that are not, that just don't have, the sort of, look at this, she's saying she's done all these featured in all these different places. But the idea I'm trying to tell you is that there's so many people out there in every city that do this type of work. And again, I'm just saying, if you wanted to go into bankruptcy, you can do the same thing for corporate, you can do the same thing for patent. Most people sit there and they're just kind of, they just don't do anything, and they don't really fight hard to find positions. But what you should understand is that by contacting all of these different places, you're essentially you're looking for if you're an associate trying to do it, you're looking for a client, and you try to approach these places, and these places are not getting a lot of applications. There's 10 pages of them. And the point I want to make here, so again, probably hundreds of places you can do bankruptcy. Now, there's different types of bankruptcy, but hundreds of different places. And then if you go a little further and you start looking down, instead of just looking for jobs in Los Angeles or in a major market, you go and you decide, I'm going to look for a bankruptcy job in the 40th largest city in California, Visalia. And so you just go bankruptcy attorneys in Visalia, which is the 40th largest city in California. And here we go. We have all these places as well. And this is, there's not a ton of people here, but you have Mark Zimmerman. Oh, let's see this guy here. You know, I'm sorry, these are sponsored. So this isn't even, but you have this guy. I guarantee you, he's not getting a lot of applications. You have, there's more results. Let's see how we do that. I don't know why it's showing things. Oh, here we go. Is this, sure, everything's wrong. Anyway, there's you can find pages and pages of, let me just go back here, bankruptcy attorneys in the sale. Yeah, so you go here and you're finding all these things, and then you have all these different lists of firms and so forth that you could apply to. So there's no excuse for anybody if you're trying to switch practice areas and really want to do it. There's no excuse for anybody not getting a job, because there are so many people out there that will hire you. And even if you're you apply to different markets, whatever state you're in, you apply to solo practitioners, you apply to small law firms, and if they see your application and they think that they can make money from you, then they have absolutely no incentive not to hire you. I mean, why wouldn't they if they aren't getting any applications or you look very, very enthusiastic? So it's not difficult for people to get jobs in other practice areas if you conduct the search the way I'm telling you to. But again, most people don't do this, and because they don't do it, they never switch practice areas, or a lot of times people don't get jobs. And yeah, so you just have to think about it that way. And but most people don't, which kind of upsets me. But give me one second. Okay, so the next one, let me see here. I've been in a foreign ministry for 16 years, but I feel like I should avoid mentioning that fact, having been doing legal work throughout in 2 legal areas. Would you advise me just to mention legal work, family such, and avoid mentioning the employment context? If you want to ask a follow-up question, I'm not sure I quite understand, but if you've been doing legal work for a foreign ministry, then you certainly should put that on your resume. You know, I don't know why you would not talk about your employer. I mean, you always should mention your employer. If you've been working someplace for 16 years, that's great. But if, you know, it depends on what type of job you're trying to get. My expertise is placing people in law firms. So in my experience, if you've been working outside of a traditional law firm for 16 years, you're going to have a difficult time transitioning back into a law firm, but not necessarily. If you do a search the way I showed you earlier, by looking at a ton of different places and so forth, and doing research and finding solo practitioners or small law firms in different geographic areas, wherever you're barred, you can find something. And again, I'm trying to encourage everyone here to really understand the power of proactively marketing yourself, because so many people are unemployed or aren't getting jobs or unhappy. And there's, you know, again, in Los Angeles, I mean, or California, I mean, this is just one state, but I keep coming back to this because it's so important. There's just, you know, tons of places anybody can work. And it's, you know, the 100 largest cities, and even number 100's got 84,000 people in it, which is huge. I mean, there's a ton of jobs and firms and places you can work there. So, you know, my advice is just to, you know, do whatever you can to apply to as many places. And but yeah, you have to mention whoever you're working for. Okay. What are the most effective ways for a law firm to determine whether an attorney will consistently meet performance expectations, not just during the honeymoon phase? Well, different law firms will have different performance expectations. So typically at the beginning of, when you're interviewing people, you want to make sure that they understand what their performance expectations are. So performance expectations in most law firms are related to billable hours. They're related to time in the office. They're related to, or working in the office, working remotely. They're working on the weekends. So anytime a law firm is interviewing someone, they have to make sure that that person is aware of those performance expectations. A lot of times um, they're not. I mean, I had a woman that was really stupid on my part, but I did the right thing. She got a job as an environmental attorney in Chicago at a smaller firm, but they did all environmental. And she was coming from the government, and she'd been out of law school like 9 or 10 years. And I got her this job, and it was a good job, paid like $300,000 a year. And anyway, it was a big fee for BCG if I placed her. And so I did place her. She got a job. And then a couple of days before she, was prepared to start there, I called her up and I was like, when you get there, you need to put as much time as you can in the office. You need to work as hard as you can to really set it, to get a good brand for yourself as a hard worker and someone willing to take on assignments and things. And I had this talk with her, and she was kind of like, "All right, all right." And then a day later, she called the firm and said she wasn't going to take the job because she was coming from the government. She liked her hours. She was happy with the lower pay for freedom and all this stuff. So I literally talked her out of the job, even though that wasn't my intent, and cost myself a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars. So the point is that people need to be aware of what the performance expectations are. If you're a law firm and you're hiring someone from another big firm and they've been there for a while, then they probably understand. Everybody kind of instinctively understands from one big firm to another what the performance expectations are. But the best way to determine that is to tell the attorney there's going to be metrics for billable hours, tell them there's going to be what's expected, and to have when they're interviewing, and make sure that that's okay with them. And different people will say different things, so making sure that people understand what's required of your firm. And most people moving between one large firm and another know exactly what the performance expectations are and aren't that upset about it. Some people won't take jobs or take jobs and then want to work remotely part of the time, and that's not part of the performance. So different firms have different needs. But if you if you talk to people and you set those out in the beginning, then people will either take the job or not, and or they and just different types of performance expectations. And sometimes people will say they're going to meet them, can, and other times they won't. But that's typically when you're interviewing the person, and the hours are the most important thing. When getting an interview with a desired firm, is it not advisable to even ask about remote work arrangements in an interview? Is that right? Yes. So again, last year alone, I'll just tell you, or this year alone, I've lost over $250,000 in money that law firms were prepared to pay me, and based on for candidates that were close to getting offers. I mean, probably at least that, but people that asked about remote work during interviews. So that's the last thing in the world you want to ask about. If you ask about that, then law firms are going to think you don't want to work in the office. And even if they do have a lot of remote work, there's going to be questions about whether or not you're manageable. So when you go into an interview, if they ask you, are you comfortable working in an office? Or some will say, are you comfortable working remotely? Your answer to that is, I'll do whatever's required. I'm happy. I'll do both. I'm productive when I'm on my own, but I'm also very productive in an office and how we're collaborating. So you basically tell the law firm when you're interviewing them, you'll do whatever they want. So that doesn't mean you have to take the job. But I will just tell you that working remotely is not a a great idea always for your career. The reason isn't because you're not interacting with people that are in the office. You don't have colleagues. You can get cabin fever working at home. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons that you should be working in an office if you can. I mean, just you're more likely to get advanced when you have relationships. You're going to get day-to-day feedback that's live, and you're going to see people's mannerisms. I mean, there's so much. There's so many reasons why it's important to work in an office, and so. But again, you don't ask about that in interviews. And so I had one guy that had an offer, he'd accepted it. And then after accepting it, he asked a question. He said it was going to be an hour and a half commute each way for him to go to the office. Could he work remotely 1 day a week? And he asked that, and they were so pissed they withdrew the offer. Said you should have asked about that when you're interviewing. Everybody works in the office. If you can't, and so they literally took away the offer. It was sad because he was making like 175, and he got this great offer paying, I don't remember, actually it was like 350 or something. It was like double the salary. And he asked about that. And even though he gotten the offer, accepted the offer, he asked about that and they withdrew the offer. Firms don't like that when people ask about that because firms are just different, have different requirements. And so it's a great question, but yeah, you don't ask about that. You can lose jobs asking about that. People won't give you interviews after that. It's also bad to go into a job and ask about that. Like say, you get an offer and you say, well, can I work or 2 or 3 days a week or whatever, 1 day a week remotely? Law firms is just not the smartest thing. This is a good question. This is a very common question that probably applies to a lot of people on this. So as a senior attorney without a large book of business, how can I still prove I'm worth hiring? So if you're a senior attorney without a large book of business, senior attorneys, I place them all the time. And so you don't need to have a large book of business to get hired by a law firm if you're a senior attorney. The most important thing if you're senior without business is whatever your expertise is in your practice area. So law firms need senior attorneys. They need them to do to all different types of work, and there's a need for them. It can be difficult depending on where you're at, but yeah, senior attorneys without a large book of business can always get a job. Depending on how senior you are. I mean, if you're in your 70s, obviously going to be a little more difficult than if you're in your like late 30s, early 40s, 50s. But senior attorneys can always get the interviews in business. All you need to do is find someone that has worked in your practice area that needs someone like you. It could be a small firm, it could be a middle market firm. I've placed people, that are in their 50s that are unemployed, that don't have any business, but have some great expertise in the practice area, and I place them into like income partner jobs in major law firms. So you can still get jobs without a large book of business. You just need to apply to enough places, and you need to look competent. Like, what can you do that that other people, that the law firm could use you for, the attorney could use you for. Some law firms want people that are managing cases and doing depositions and trials, and the partners there want to concentrate on business development. And there's just all sorts of situations where senior attorneys can get business. You can always get a business. You just have, you can always get a job. You just have to be able to, look at enough places. That's all. Any senior attorney can get a job. Anybody can get a job, by the way. Anybody that's discouraged, doesn't think you can get a job, there's always someone that will hire you. It may not be the ideal situation, but there's always someone that will hire you. Even a senior attorney. I've made some crazy hires of attorneys throughout the years myself. And often it's just the enthusiasm for doing the work, your expertise in finding someone that will hire you. I had a woman once that I hired. She was in her late 60s. This is literally a hire that I made. And she smoked like crazy. She was in really bad health. She'd been unemployed for several years, like 4 or 5 years. I mean, not that well, she'd be employed, but just kind of in these like sporadic positions and without any permanence. And I had a job doing this certain type of real estate litigation, and she had a background in real estate litigation. And I needed someone to come in and basically run a whole case for me and worked with a couple of associates I had, and I hired her. It was a great hire, and she did an amazing job. And but I needed her for that one thing, and somehow we found each other. I don't know if she found me or what happened, but somehow we found each other, and or maybe I had an ad. I don't know how, but anyway, I hired her, and so she was able to get a position, and she worked for me for at least 3 or 4 years, and so there's always someone that will hire you. But the next question, I had twins for 6 years ago, and I was without any family help. I've done the bar exam since New York, and I'm doing a legal certification now. Any advice on you could share on this desperate situation? So I don't think it's a desperate situation. I think that whatever situation you're in, you can get a job. It's not desperate. Again, let's pull up New York State. Cities in New York State. Now, I don't know where you're located, but New York State. Yeah, I love these questions because there's just so many people that can get positions that aren't. Okay, so here's all the cities. Let's sort them by population. Oh, that's really small. But let's say you're in, I don't know, Peaksville, Westchester. So Peaksville, New York. That's a city of 25,000 people. I mean, I'm just saying maybe you're in the suburbs, working in living in Peaksville. So just very simple. You go to attorneys in Peaksville, New York. Very simple. So these are all the attorneys in Peaksville, New York. I don't know what practice area you want to do, but it doesn't really matter. If you want to do family law in Peaksville, New York, there's probably plenty of small law firms and people that would hire you if you applied to be a family law attorney without any experience. If you wanted to do immigration, same thing. There's just all of these different firms and places you could work in Peaksville. So again, there's an incredible number of firms just in Peaksville. I mean, look at all this. And so one of these attorneys will hire you, whether it's a solo practitioner, whether it's a personal injury law firm, whoever it is. There's tons of people that will hire you. Here's just Peaksville. Look at all these attorneys. Look at all these practice areas. I mean, someone will hire you. And I worked with one woman in Detroit once. She she was a hot mess. She graduated from law school when she was in her mid-50s. She was bad health, smoked all the time. She died probably in her mid-60s from smoking. But in any event, she graduated from law school, had no experience. She'd been a nurse before she went to law school and wanted to get a job. And she was able to easily get a job, I think, just by randomly applying to a personal injury law firms in Detroit. And she got a great job. She got a job with this firm, and she was very, very enthusiastic about it, and ended up becoming a partner there. And then years later, I was watching the news, and she was some airplane had crashed in Detroit or something, or no, it was something like the plane was on the runway and wouldn't let the people out for like 14 hours or something. And so and the toilets were overflowing. So she was like the lead attorney on that, and ended up like becoming, very successful financially. She bought like a $1.5 million condominium in Detroit, which is I think probably the most expensive condominium in Detroit you can possibly get, or back then, and very, very successful. And so there's so many positions out there for anybody. Like this is just wherever you are in New York, there's tons of places. There's attorneys everywhere. So these attorneys need help, and no one is applying to these places. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm sharing the right screen. I apologize. Give me 1 second. So what I was doing here, just real quickly, is I did a search for municipalities in New York. I chose this place, Peaksville, just as a random city there. Then I did a search for attorneys in Peaksville and found all these different places. So your situation, if you're unemployed, is not fatal at all. I mean, there's just in Peaksville, which you may live, there's going to be an incredible number of firms, and there's just so many people, places anybody can work. And no matter what city you're in, if you just apply to attorneys there, it could be a solo practitioner, it could be a small firm. But most law firms and most attorneys are not getting unsolicited applications. So just trying to apply for places that have openings is a desperate situation, because people are, if you're you graduated from law school 6 years ago, raising kids, and now you're suddenly looking for a job. If you're applying to places with openings, the places that are most likely to hire you are are going to hire people with experience. Now, there are certain caliber of firms that will literally almost hire anyone. So I remember I've had candidates in Los Angeles that lost jobs. They could have been doing corporate or trademark or something, and they applied to like insurance defense firms paying like maybe $60,000 a year and got offers, even though like they didn't have experience in it. So I mean, there's always someone that will hire you. You just have to be able to apply to enough places. And I talked a lot about that today, and I talked about it at the end of the webinar, because there's so much hope out there, regardless of what practice area you're in, regardless of who you are, and you can really anybody can do well. And even if you feel like you're getting into like a crappy practice here, I know one of the most famous immigration attorneys in the country, who that was my friend, graduated from law school without a job, and went to like a fourth-tier law school after having had another career and had children and stuff, and just started a practice doing that. And I think she actually worked for someone in the summer, and then decided that she wanted to start her own firm, and is doing incredibly well. I mean, there's so many opportunities. Like the presentation had so many questions. Because interviewing culture differs from market to market. I moved to Southern California, Northern California, and the cultures are different. I'm confident this will help. Yeah, so different markets of the country have different cultures, and that's that is important to understand. So there are markets and cultures where you might be comfortable, and then there's markets and cultures where you might not be comfortable. So smaller markets typically have different cultures than larger markets. It just depends on where you're interviewing. And there are people that are much better suited living in Southern California and Northern California. The people that are better suited working in New York. There are people that are better suited Washington, D.C. So a lot of times the culture of the market will determine how happy you are, and can yeah. Okay, next question. Do you recommend using AI to review or rewrite your resume? Yes. So when you rewrite a resume, one of the most important things that you can do is to make sure it looks like you're focused on one practice area. So a lot of times people will have this resume that's just full of jumbo, bunch of different practice areas and things. And so you would want to rewrite your resume, if you did using AI, to basically say, so if you're a real estate transactional attorney, but you've also done litigation, maybe a little corporate or whatever, and you're trying to apply for real estate jobs, you could ask AI to make my resume look like I'm focused on real estate, and see what it does. And it doesn't mean you're going to get the right result, but you want to make sure that your resume looks like you're focused on one practice area. And again, I brought this point up earlier, and everybody who's listening to this, this could change the direction of your career in a major way. If you are able to if you are able to make your resume look like you're focused on one practice area, meaning instead of having all this jumbo, it looks like you're very focused on one practice area, then you're going to get a lot more interviews, and you're going to get a lot more jobs. And if you get into a job where you are focused on one practice area, you're going to have a better career probably. So your resume, you need to make things look focused. And so a lot of times people, again, they'll be very proud to say, I did corporate M&A, then I helped out with a litigation brief, and then I worked on some intellectual property transactions. I mean, like, no, like if you want to look, you should look like you're an M&A attorney, or you should look like if you want to be a corporate transactional attorney, you should lead with that. So my biggest piece of advice is, if you're applying for a job, like say you did, like this is just an example. I want everyone to kind of understand this. So corporate, real estate, maybe you did corporate 60%, and you did real estate, I don't know, real estate Real estate 20%. 20%, and then sorry, 10%. And then you did I don't know, litigation or something like that, with 20 or other stuff of and with 20%. And then that's job one. And then job two, you did like that would be job, let's just call that job. And then job one, you did corporate 10% or 20%. Then you did real estate 30%. And you did other stuff 50%. Okay, so what you would do is you have two different resumes. So if you're applying for corporate jobs, like your corporate resume would just say, all you would do would be you talk about, if you could, you just talk about this, you talk about corporate, right? Just nothing but corporate, and then here. So you just basically have a resume that talks only about corporate. You leave all this other stuff off. I mean, if you want, you could add a line that also did this other stuff, but typically you just want to have a resume doing that. And then if you're applying for a real estate job, this is all you talk about. You don't want to talk about all these other things. You just talk about that. And so this literally can change your career. I mean, it's so dumb that people don't do this. I mean, but if you just look like you're focused on one practice area, if a firm has a corporate opening or a real estate opening, they're going to hire the person that looks like they did that practice area, not someone that says they do all this other stuff. So this is how employers review resumes. Now, some systems are using AI and all that sort of stuff to review resumes. So you need to have a resume that looks focused on one practice area. If you're able to do that, you're going to be much better suited. And sometimes people might even have let's just say job. Let's go back to job one. Job one might be let's just call this the job. This is job one. I don't know, but maybe we had another job somewhere in here, like job. Let's say job 3, or I don't know what that would be. Job. Well, I'm getting mixed up here, but just say another job and you did all litigation. So this is another mistake that people made. So let's just say this was 2022, this job, and then this job was in 2023. And this job is in whatever. This job is in 2023 to 2025. So what I would advise anybody, this is just very important on your resume. This is going to get you dramatically more interviews. So in this job, if you're applying for real estate, you would just talk about real estate. You talk about real estate, and then this job, if you had any real estate experience, just a tiny bit, you talk about that. Otherwise, you just call yourself an associate or whatever. You don't draw attention to other practice areas. Because if you draw attention to other practice areas, that's people look at a resume and all they want to do is think like this person's this practice area. You do the same thing if you were looking for a doctor, or you were looking for an attorney to help you. You wouldn't want someone that did criminal law and corporate law and real estate transactions. If you needed a criminal law attorney, you would want someone that did one thing. So your resume just needs to give the sense of that's what you're doing. And then other people, they might have, associations or interests, and they might have entertainment law, or entertainment law and, real estate section of the bar, and then, all these other things. And so if you were applying for a real estate position, you would obviously want to leave the real estate stuff on there, but this entertainment crap is not going to help you, so you just remove it. And then if you were trying to get a corporate position, you wouldn't have any of this stuff. You just remove it, because you don't want people to think of you as anything else than that practice area. And I hope that helps everyone, because the more you understand that, the more jobs you will get. These sorts of changes that people make to their resumes. I've literally seen people go from, like I told you earlier, applying to 50 firms and not getting a single interview, to applying to another 50 firms and getting, multiple interviews. Just by making that change. So this is especially the case for people that are older, might have had a lot of jobs. You just make everything look like you're focused on more practice area. The biggest mistake I see too is a lot of people go to these companies that write resumes for attorneys. Maybe they get laid off or something, or maybe they're whatever. And a lot of times the worst resumes are people that go in-house because they talk about 10 different practice areas, and no one's going to hire someone like that. How would someone determine what firms have better work-life balance? So larger firms are not going to have good work-life balance. None of them, maybe some, but it's very, very rare. The way to go to a firm with better work-life balance is typically to go to a middle market firm or work in a smaller geographic market. Believe it or not, 250 largest cities in the country, if you start looking at firms that might be ranked, I don't know, 50, 100, firm company, or sorry, city size 100, city size 150. As you move away from major markets, there's a better work-life balance. I mean, if you were to work in Rochester, New York, compared to New York City, I mean, you'd find that even the best firms there, most people don't work over 1,800 hours a year, and people go home in a normal time. If you were to work in I don't know, just different examples. I mean, different markets are going to have much different expectations, and then within the markets, sometimes the largest firms representing the largest clients may have, not work-life balance. But typically, if you want to have a good work-life balance, you just work in a smaller market. That's what I mean. I'll tell you a couple other things, but that most attorneys all over the country. I mean, everyone's trying to work on the coast and. But most attorneys all over the country do not have jobs that are burning them out. I mean, some of them do, but the majority of them don't. So if you start getting away from California, New York, Florida, to some extent, Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, you start getting away from those major markets. Most people do not work crazy hours. Also, it's based on your practice area. So people will go into practice areas like trust and estates where the hours aren't horrible. Different, markets have just different expectations for their attorneys. I was working with a guy recently that was in New York City, and he was like a non-equity partner at a firm. He was making $600,000 a year, but he was literally working 7 days a week, just constantly. He'd been doing it for years. The firm wasn't hiring other people to work for him with him. And I was like, he wanted to get another job. So I found him a firm in New York City that paid $200,000 less, but where he would have good work-life balance, where he would get to work in the train at 9, go home at like 6:30, instead of getting to work at like 8 and going home at like 11 on the last train, which he'd been doing for years. But he didn't take it because he wanted to make that extra 200,000 because he had a child going to college and all this stuff. But the point is that there's firms in every market that have a good life balance. Typically, when you move away from large firms to middle market firms, they have better work-life balance. And then when you work in the smaller markets, there's always better work-life balance. And it also depends on your practice area. But the mistake that a lot of people make is they think that every firm, any firm they want to work at that pays the salary they want to work at, that's the only type of firm they want. And therefore, or they want to work in firms that are very prestigious. And but typically, the larger the firm, the bigger the clients, the more demanding it's going to be. But most law firms, there is work-life balance all over the country. People just don't, do that. They don't look at enough. I'm sorry, they don't look at enough. They don't look at enough markets. They don't think about their practice area. They don't look at smaller firms. I mean, solo practitioners, small firms in every market all of them don't work crazy hours. So you just have to apply to enough places and find them. But it literally depends on the market, depends on the practice area. It depends on the size firm. One of the things I've started seeing a lot in New York City, which is interesting, and it's very smart, is a lot of people, I talked about this earlier, will take positions with middle market firms instead of huge law firms because they want that work-life balance. They'll take a pay cut, but the pay cut gives them a life outside of work. And I think is, major, really helpful. Because a newly barred attorney who wants to join a firm with no experience in real estate and business transactions, but with a genuine passion and desire to enter the field, what is the best way I can market myself at an interview and convince them I should get a position? Okay, well, it depends on the firm, but most law firms are not going to have ads for attorneys that are just newly barred to do real estate or business transactions. So, but again, if you want to enter the field, there's tons and tons of opportunities and places you can work. So I don't know what city you're in. Let's pretend you're in. Let's see. Wait 1 second here. Let's pretend you're in. Anybody that wants to work in any practice area can. I keep coming back to these examples, but it's just let's say you're in newly barred attorney, list of cities in Minnesota. Okay, Minnesota. There are a list of cities in Minnesota. You have all these different cities in terms of their population. Let's say you want to work in, again, there's so many different places you can work. Let's say let's just play a game here and say you're in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Again, there's just, so many opportunities. Real estate attorneys. So here's Minnesota. Here's real estate attorneys in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Look at all these people. There's 3 pages of them of people that are apparently real estate attorneys. And look at this. We're literally in Ankara, Minnesota, a small area, right, of a country. And then these people say that they do real estate law and business law. So again, anybody that wants to work in any practice area, if you send your resume to this person, explain your interest in the practice area, and send them your resume, your odds of getting a position are not bad, because if this person has work that they can give to a newly barred attorney and you're relatively inexpensive, they're likely to hire you. Why wouldn't they? And because they might have extra work and can make money from the work you're doing, and you have a good chance of getting a position. So again, finding places that do the work, finding small firms, applying to enough of them. And again, I'm just in Coon Rapids here, and look at how many places there are. Just give me 1 second. Hi, apologize. Anyway, this should just give you, anybody that's looking for a position, it should give you a good indication of how many places there are anybody can apply. And this is just Coon Rapids. And again, it's just, we looked at these cities, and it's one of the smaller cities in Minnesota. So there are opportunities literally everywhere for any type of practice area you want to do. Even if you wanted to work probably in even Andover, it's got let's see, Andover, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Andover, Minnesota. Let's see if there's any real estate attorneys there. I'm sure there are. Here we go. We got, I guess we have more people here. So real estate attorney in Andover, Minnesota. This is a city, a state of 25,000 people. So this guy does evictions, but it may not be really interested in it. But you can look at this guy. You can literally call 24 hours a day at 3 a.m. Your call will be answered by I like that. But the point is that any market you want to go into, regardless of your practice here, regardless of your situation, there's always places you could apply. And I would guess, if you wanted to do the whole state of Minnesota, there's probably 5,000 plus places that do real estate or attorneys you could apply to. So it's absolutely insane for anybody that's discouraged and thinks you can't find a job. As long as you're happy being proactive and saying, I want to be a real estate attorney, I'd love to have the opportunity. The thing too is that even if you want to be a real estate or business transactions attorney, if that's like your dream, then all you need to do is get experience from someone that's doing it. You can get experience in a small law firm, a solo practitioner, whatever. You try to get the best job you can. And then once you get a job like that, you start getting training. You do that for a couple of years and you can move to a bigger firm. And then after that, you can move to a bigger one. So it doesn't matter. Like your goal is to get training. And so people that get out of law school, a lot of times they think that the most important thing for them is to be able to make as much money as possible. But that's ass backwards. Like what you need to do is you need to get experience in the practice area that you want to do. And whatever that practice area is, you need to work, you just need someone to train you. And someone will literally pay you to go there and get training. I mean, I think it's like the most awesome thing, because if you get 5 years of experience doing real estate transactions, like you'll know how to do real estate transactions. You can open up your own firm, you can go to work for a larger firm. And it doesn't really matter where you get it. If you get it the best firm you can, but there's always going to be any market, Nevada, North Dakota, there's going to be so many places that you can get a job. So just find a place that's willing to train you. And people will train people that are enthusiastic about doing something, and find someone that doesn't, get applications. You don't apply to jobs, just apply proactively and you will get opportunities. And it's literally, one of the smartest things anybody can do. Anybody can find a job in their practice area if they're proactive enough looking for a job. Again, hundreds of cities and things in every insane. Okay. I've been offered an in-house role, which let me switch to non-contentious work in a practice area I want to do this non-contentious work in private practice, but no firms will allow me to switch from litigation. Would it be worth a try and move practice areas in-house and then try to come back to a private practice, given what you said on learning and the quality of work in-house? So yes, I mean, if you go in-house, you can always, you're always going to be able to, if you want, if you're getting experience in one practice area, to come back and work potentially in that practice area in a law firm. A lot of people don't like the conflict and things that are involved in litigation or want to get out of it. You're always going to be better off if you can find a firm doing that type of work in a law firm as opposed to in-house. So the problem with going in-house is not just the level of work, no one knows what it is, but it also shows interest in another practice setting. So law firms work for paying clients. Paying clients have certain expectations. Different law firms are, it's just the law firms tend to be focused on one type of work rather than another. So it does become extremely difficult to go back to a law firm if you go in-house. Now, people do it all the time, and you could do it applying to smaller firms and everything. And people in-house do get moved back into law firms. It's not something that's, it does happen, and you can do it if you apply to enough places. But my advice would be, if you can get into a law firm doing that, you're going to be better off. The problem with in-house jobs, and I think I brought this up earlier, and it depends on where you're going to work, but the biggest problem with in-house jobs is that, a couple of problems, but one of the main problems is most of the people that go in-house, those jobs don't last very long. They don't last very long, often not because of your performance. They don't last very long because companies will have financial problems. They'll go out of business. They will merge. They'll move their headquarters. They will bring in a new general counsel. They will bring in a new CEO, and all this stuff happens. And I see resumes of people all the time. I was talking to a guy a couple of years ago. He was he'd been in a big firm in Chicago, like, third, 6-year associate making $400,000 a year or something. And got this in-house job he thought would be awesome in Durango, Colorado. And he got there and he bought a house, and he was there like 4 weeks. And the firm, the company decided that they were gonna, I don't know, downsize their in-house legal department, only like 3 or 4 people. So he lost his job. And I mean, this happens all the time. And it's something you need to be aware of in terms of the risk of going in-house, because in-house is very, very risky. And the problem going in-house is that if you think it was difficult for you getting this in-house job, now it's even more difficult when you have you're in-house and you lose your job to find another in-house job. So there's actually a lot more employment security. People don't realize that working in law firms, and learning how to do that practice area in law firms, because in a law firm, first of all, there's always law firms that will hire you, regardless of your age. But the second of all, you learn how to generate business and things. And if you're able to do that, that gives you like career stability that you can work into your 80s, like doing one practice area. But very few people understand that. And so because they don't understand that, they take in-house jobs, and then they kind of sell themselves short in their career, and they don't have as much longevity. So yeah, if you can find a job in-house doing that, certainly you can try to transition that back into a law firm. But a law firm with an opening in your practice area is always going to hire someone coming from a law firm and not in-house. You would too. They know the practice setting, they know work hard. And so you have to, if you make that decision, you're going to have to probably try to find jobs that maybe in small markets, sometimes they may have an opening and not getting a lot of application in that practice area, but in general, it's hard. So, and sometimes the in-house role might be very stable. Like it could be like a good someplace where where you believe you could have career longevity, and there's people that have been there for 20 years and stuff. So that could actually be a good job, but you just have to be very careful. Give me 1 second. Next question. Okay, how can I overcome skepticism from law firms if my resume shows short stints in multiple employers? So typically, if a law firm sees someone with short stints in multiple employers, they're going to be more likely to hire the person that doesn't have those short stints. But at the same time, law firms are businesses. So if the law firm has a lot of work to be done and they're not getting a lot of applications, and they really need someone to step in, then a lot of times they'll ignore that. So what does that mean? So imagine you're a law firm and the partners working there have more work than they can handle. They're stressed out, or maybe they're, whatever's going on, or some partners not getting a lot of applications and, has a job posted, or a small law firm, and they see someone with this, but they're just more concerned about getting someone in the door than anything else like that. That would be actually a place where you get a position. So firms are often very skeptical. It's the larger employers that get a lot of applications that are typically the most concerned with it. Large law firms do hire people with short stints, but typically, if you have a lot of these short stints, it makes it more difficult for you to get into larger firms that are getting a lot of applications. So you can overcome the skepticism, and a lot of times people have a series of explanations for each move, but and often they're very good. So maybe you're at 3 firms, one went out of business, the other decided we're going to get rid of a practice area or something, and then you went to another third firm, it's all in 3 years. I mean, sometimes you can have very good explanations, but the thing you need to realize when you do have those short stints is that people with short stints are going to be compared to people that don't have short stints. And so, you're better off trying to commit somewhere. And one of the things I would just say, this is to all young attorneys and, and people, whoever you are. And I made this point earlier, like the most important thing for you, like your first 5 to 6 years of practice, is just to get training. You're getting training, like someone's training you in a practice area for free, and they're paying you. So you really want to, not concentrate, think so much about your employer and what you like and don't like about them, is the kind of training you're getting. And so don't leave. People leave jobs for an extra 20. People leave jobs for an extra 20, 30,000. People leave jobs because they want to go to one place where they can work remotely or whatever. And honestly, the most important thing you can do, like your first several years of practice, is just put your head down and work and get training, and don't worry about the politics. Don't worry about, getting into a better firm. Your first few years is good. So But at the same time, these multiple moves, if you're getting training, you really shouldn't worry too much about where you're at unless you can get a much better firm. So sometimes people move from a small firm or a medium-sized firm to a larger medium-sized firm to an even larger firm. And so you can often explain that by wanting to get more sophisticated work, feeling like you were held back, the firm you're at, and then this next firm is exactly what you want. Or you were hired to do real estate, and the firm didn't have enough real estate, so they gave you corporate. So you went to another firm where you could concentrate on real estate, and that now you want to do larger commercial transactions at the next firm. So sometimes you can overcome a lot of skepticism sometimes by showing a growth or showing that explaining that things happen to you that were beyond your control, and so that can help. But honestly, if it's something you're looking at other jobs, and one job you look at is not necessarily much better than the one you got, then there's really no sense in moving firms, because it's just it makes you look like you're unstable or you're not doing good work, or where the next place you go that you're not going to commit. Give me 1 second. Okay, next question. What do law firms want to see from law students and during internships as signals we're ready for full-time roles after graduation? So the most important thing when you get into an internship or summer associateship is typically two things. One is to do the best quality work you possibly can. So your work should be proofread. Your work should be, you should use Grammarly or ChatGPT or whatever it is to make sure your work's well proofread, that it's thought through, and that the work product you're turning in is very good. So I learned something pretty early in my career that was incredibly important. So when I started practicing, I worked for a federal judge, and this federal judge was just like insane about detail. So he wanted to make sure that every single thing that left his office the language was tight, was well proofread, and there was no problems with it. It was really, really good. And when I got there, I was making typos and bad punctuation and a lot of it, but I was making mistakes. And he literally put the fear of God into me to not make these sort of things. And so I became very, very detail oriented. And then when I got into my first law firm, I carried over that way of looking at things and learned from partners that were very, very good writers and got even better. And it became like, what I would do, just so you understand, to, go from a position of doing like not great work to really good work, is I would write something, and say writing something took me 10 hours, but then I would spend 30 hours making sure it was perfect, like double checking things, checking the punctuation, taking out extraneous language, all those sort of stuff to make it really, really good. And that's a lot of times that type of detail is what people need to see from interns and stuff. Now you need to be able to get along with people and that sort of thing, but you need to produce the best quality work you can. It's actually much easier now with ChatGPT and whatever Grok and whatever you're using to have things proofread and to make the language tighter, and to, I don't even know if you can check citations and things, but to do the best possible job you can, and to ask for input on your stuff. So nothing should be sloppy. Like a lot of people, when they're young attorneys, are very eager to get the work out and to show it to people and to show their thoughts and everything. But the most important thing is how good your work is, the work quality. And then the next thing for law students and interns is you want to make sure you work as many hours as possible. So ultimately, most firms are paid, not all firms, but most firms are, get bill hourly rates, and the attorneys that work the most hours make the firm the most money. So as a law student or an intern, you want to work as many hours as you can. And that's very important. You want to preferably be in the office before the people you're working for get in the office. And then you want to leave the office after they leave. So when I was practicing, if I was working, I remember I was second firm, I was working directly with one partner. He would get in at 8:30. I would get in at 8. He would leave at 7 or 8. I would leave at 8:30 or 9 or right after him. So showing that you're there all the time is important. Prioritizing that and making sure that people think you're going to work hard. I mean, that's what you would want. If you had two people you could hire, one that wouldn't work hard and the other that did, one that did really good work, the other that didn't, you would hire the person that looked like they were going to work the hardest and do the best work. And it's really not that hard now to do to proofread work and stuff. I used to do it manually without any help from the computer and things. Okay, is unemployment due to maternity a good reason for not working for a year? I also changed my visa status and will receive my employment authorization in a couple months. Yeah, unemployment for maternity is a great reason. Most firms won't hold that against you. It's probably a little bit harder to get a position that way than if you were currently employed, but most firms will not hold that against you. I'm not sure about the visa status, but yeah, you need to be authorized to work in the US. But anybody, so your people are hiring women or whatever that have kids. I mean, all that stuff should be de-emphasized because again, anybody that's looking for a job is competing against other people. So if you're mother and you took time off and you're applying for a job, you're competing with people that aren't mothers and didn't take time off. So there's actually good reasons for law firms to hire mothers. One of the reasons is that they have kids at home, they need a job, they need to support them, they're likely to stay. So that's actually a good thing. I mean, it's not something that necessarily can hurt you. So that's actually not a bad thing. But if they believe that there's no childcare and it's going to take away from, then that can hurt. So you want to make people actually like mothers and things that took time off because they know they're going to need the job. Law firms also love when associates buy houses and cars and have student loans because they know the person needs to work there. So maternity leave is not a bad thing. But again, if you have maternity leave and then you have a visa status issue, again, if you are an attorney on a visa, you're competing against attorneys that aren't on visas. So, that can hurt you. So any thing in your background that looks like it could, you have to de-emphasize it. If you have it on a visa, you have to look at a harder worker. I mean, there's all sorts of things. So yes, some law firms will love hiring people from other countries that are on visas, and they'll often like that because those people are much more likely to stay. And so, because if they lose their job, they have to go back to their country. So a lot of times people work much harder, and that's good. So all these negatives can be positives. A lot of people with visas, they don't go into interviews and say, I feel fortunate to have the opportunity to work in the United States. This means everything to me. I've always wanted to work here. That's actually very attractive. Other times people will go in and not say something like that. So anytime you have some sort of negativity, you say, I'm a mother, I took maternity leave, I really need to get back to work to support my child. That's attractive. I'm on a visa. I really want to, work in the United States. It's so important to me. I've always wanted to live here, that sort of thing, that can be attractive. So anytime there's some sort of, anytime there's some sort of negative in your background that could be a positive, that you need to frame it as a positive. So, Jesus. Okay, if someone used to love their job and still get a large workflow and is now burning them out, and they no longer find it rewarding, how did they get the enjoyment back? So a lot of times, not liking your job can be due to a lot of different factors. When I was practicing, what I didn't like about it that scared me was just I felt like, in terms of my last law firm I worked at, I felt like it was stable and it scared me. It's just like it was scary. And I felt like if I went into another situation, it could be scary too. So, if you still get a lot of work and you're burning out and you no longer find it rewarding, how do you get your enjoyment back? Well, first of all, I'll be completely honest with you. A lot of partners in law firms, I would say, I don't know if it's 50%, But it's, you know, in large law firms, they actually, many of them do not find it rewarding. And as a matter of fact, a lot of them talk about how rewarding it is, but the best ones do find it rewarding. So, you know, so if you don't enjoy your job, it can be due to a lot of factors. It can be, sometimes it's due to the practice setting you're in. So, I mean, the type of firm you're in. So sometimes people might be more comfortable in a smaller firm. Sometimes people might be more comfortable in a different market. Sometimes you may just not like being an attorney, and or you know, or maybe you did like it. So you have to go back to like, what did you like about your job initially that you don't like? Sometimes it's just the amount of work, and that's a problem that you can solve by moving to another firm. But if you don't find your job rewarding and you don't like it, then you know you need to figure out what is rewarding. So people will move out of different practice areas. People working in major law firms doing commercial litigation may find it unrewarding and they decide to go into family law and they're happier doing that, or personal injury law, or you know, different people will do different things that to make themselves happy. Sometimes it means moving to a different practice setting, like in-house, working in the government. There's all sorts of practice settings that aren't as demanding and don't put as much pressure on people, or even different branches or different practice areas and things. So, but yeah, you should, anybody that is working, if you're going to work as an attorney, you actually, you know, my advice is to really like your job. And because if you like your job, then you should be enjoying the 8 hours or 10 hours a day you're working. Because if you don't, then that's just not a good life. So you need to enjoy what you're doing. And I can't stress that enough. I just, you know, and it could be the practice area you're in, it could be the location of the country you're in, the size firm, but everybody should enjoy what they're, you know, what they're doing. And if you don't, then that's a problem. Okay, my resume is mainly research-based clerk work in government settings. How do I make myself more appealing to employers? That's the problem with people that go into the government. So government jobs, I don't, you know, you have state government, you have federal government, you have municipal government, all sorts of government jobs. And a lot of people that go into those are, you know, don't necessarily enjoy it very much. And but they get good pay, they have employment stability, the hours are good. So, you know, if, it depends on what you want to do, but you have to, you know, whatever type of work you're doing, if you're doing research, then you need to portray yourself as a litigator and doing litigation related work. But if you're not, you know, if you're not doing real legal work and you're not, you know, and it's mainly clerical work, then I guess my advice to you would be you're going to need to try to, you know, if that's not what you want to do, then you're going to need to try to apply to places that will hire you based on your experience, which is going to mean smaller firms, smaller markets, solo practitioners, things like that. Because the law firm, you know, just put yourself in the situation, in the shoes of a law firm. If a law firm has an opening, they're going to vastly prefer hiring someone that has experience doing something than someone that's been a clerk and, you know, spent years doing that. So that's just not appealing to an employer. Some of those people in the government will try to get jobs in other branches or other parts of the government that might give them better experience. So maybe there's, I don't know, litigation related or other types of legal jobs in whatever government branch or whatever you're in, and you could be a good candidate for that. But I think one of the points I want to make to everyone too here, that once you walk away from a law firm, this is a lot of times what happens. And these can be bad career moves because you're not a specialist in one practice area. You're no longer marketable to firms. You know, you may be able to stay in a government position for 20 years, but if it's not satisfying, then, you know, that's not a good thing. I know people that have become career law clerks for federal judges, and they actually enjoy that, and the pay is actually not that bad, and they do that for the rest of their career. But it just kind of depends on the person. So, you know, I would recommend let me just say, doing, working for the, trying to transition out of whatever you're doing if you're unhappy. Okay, I have some recommendations for recruiters, but I'm thinking about just reaching out to smaller firms myself. For your advice, what would be the better path? Sure. I mean, most recruiters, the majority of them only work with major or large law firms. So if you want to work in smaller law firms, then that's how you would have to do it. You would probably want to reach out to smaller firms if that's the kind of place you want to work. Most smaller firms, because it's a lot of work for the recruiters to set up the to get contracts with them and stuff. So most recruiters aren't working with a lot of smaller law firms. I mean, BCG does, but at the same time, it's going to be dependent on a lot of cases on the geographic area you're in. It's going to be dependent on just a lot of different factors. So if it was me, I would. You can sometimes find recruiters that in different markets or that have different. There's always recruiters like if you're in North Carolina. There's going to be some recruiters that are based in North Carolina that work with a variety of firms there that have relationships. Like that could be a good recruiter for you if you if you have the qualifications you might be interested in. But at the same time, if most recruiters might have a relationship with 50 firms, 30 firms, and so if there's tens of thousands of law firms in the country, obviously it's going to be easier for you to find a position without using a recruiter many times. Okay. So thanks for these questions. This is a lot of questions with a long webinar, but everyone who's staying is very helpful for you. So I commend everyone for spending time doing this today. Let's see here. And this kind of stuff, everything you learned today, I mean, if you absorb this information, these questions, and maybe change the direction of your life. Let's see. Okay, what if you want to transition to a practice area but have very little experience? How can you edit your resume to include this area? Well, almost all of your experiences in different niche area. This would leave out 90% of my experience and also all of my prior networking experience, committees, publications, speaking events. Just to further explain, looking to transition from trademark, a lot of corporate and general transactional work, contracts and real estate. Yeah, that's very hard. Trademark is a dangerous practice area because a lot of the work in the larger firms is done by paralegals and staff attorneys. And there are sophisticated branches of trademark like litigation and things, and there's some very well-known trademark attorneys in the country. But in general, it's a very difficult practice area to get a position in. How do you transition out of that? It's difficult. I mean, you could potentially do it in your own firm, but having all of that experience and such a strong resume, publications, committees, and speaking events is going to make it difficult for you to transition out of that. And why would you take all of that experience and activities and things you've done and transition into another practice area? Trademark, I don't know if you're doing trademark transactional work or trademark litigation, but in reality, most trademark is a transactional practice area. The subject matter is going to be different in real estate or corporate, but those are transactional practice areas. So you're already in a transactional practice area. If you want to transition out, you should ask yourself some questions like, why did I spend all this time in this practice area when I want to do something else? You certainly can transition, but you're starting from like ground zero, just almost like a law student getting their first job. So I think that's very, very difficult. If you do choose to do that, and you can, you're probably going to need to try to find positions with small firms that are willing to hire you and maybe give you some corporate work. So, or try to, that's what I would do. I would try to find a small firm that does trademark and then may also have some corporate related work or maybe real estate and that sort of thing. So if you go to a middle market firm or a smaller firm in a smaller market, you may be able to work on different types of things as opposed to trademark. But I mean, if you have all this experience doing one thing, why did you get all the experience? Why did you get so active in it? What is motivating this change right now. Now, I would say I think trademark is an extremely risky practice here and a difficult one to have a long-term career in, and also to make money in, because a lot of them trademarks are done at like a flat fee, and so unless you're doing litigation, it can be very difficult. But I would, I would highly recommend that you kind of think about that, and then if you are very serious about transitioning from one transactional practice area to other, because you may not find corporate and real estate that much different. But if you are, then you're going to have to somehow convince Pete. You're probably going to want to go to other size firms that are doing a mix of practice areas, where their attorneys are doing a mix of practice areas. So what does that mean? So in large markets, like, attorneys are specialists. Like, there's trademark specialists, there's patent specialists for hard sciences, which are like physics, and then there's patent specialists for bio, there's M&A attorneys or securities attorneys. So large markets have specialists. When you get into smaller markets, typically, like if you're talking to a firm in St. Paul, Minnesota, like that, or not even, that's even a larger market, but smaller markets, like the attorneys there will do a bunch of different things. They might do some trademark, they might do corporate and real estate, and maybe a little litigation. So anytime you go into a smaller market, because there's not a lot of specialists, then people do a variety of things. You could do it that way and move into a smaller market. Sometimes smaller firms in major markets may do a bunch of different things. But it's really going to be dependent on the firm. I think you'd have a very difficult time getting hired and by any firm doing just trademark. You'd want to go, doing another practice area if you have that much experience. I think you'd have to go to a firm where you can work on a variety of practice areas in addition to that, or which could be in your market, smaller firm, or it could be in a different market. That's what I would recommend. Depends on how much experience you have, but yeah, you can't lie in your resume if 90% of your experience is in one practice area. You have to be honest about it. But finding firms where you could do a variety of things is maybe the best solution. But yeah, that's tough. Okay, let's see here. I heard in a seminar that firms will always try to underpay you, get you as cheap as possible. How true is this? I'm thinking salary negotiation. Yes, law firms are businesses. So a law firm will pay you as little as you will accept, and as much as they think they need to pay to get people to work there. So that's exactly how it works. Law firms do that with partners. They try to get them as cheaply as possible. Law firms do that with associates. If a law firm wants to attract the best talent, like the major law firms, the people at the best schools, then yes, they will pay a lot because that's what they need to attract them. But in general, yes, 90% of law firms are trying to get people as cheaply as possible. That's just how it works. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. You would do the same thing if you're a law firm. Any business, like if you just say you operated a I don't know, you operated I'm just thinking of random businesses here. You might operate well, I don't know, blanking. Well, anyway, I used to have an asphalt business. So if I had someone I could hire for $20 an hour, and I had that would happily work there, and then and do good work, and there's someone else wanted $30 an hour, and would happily work there and do good work, I would hire the person at $20 an hour because I'm a business and I want to make as much money as possible. So that's just how it works. And so law firms will hire that's what they want. So it's something to keep in mind. They're businesses. And so, and again, you would do the same thing if you were a business too. You try to hire the people that are least expensive. So how do you get around that? You try to find firms that pay more. And sometimes firms will overpay and they don't even know it. And so finding those firms can be very useful. I've seen people get jobs paying like $300,000 a year in the middle of nowhere. And the firm probably doesn't know how much they're paying too much. They have big client or decent sized clients. And so they will always try to underpay you. You would too. But what is the best appropriate way to ask a partner for work on an article regarding a legal practice topic, and how can the associate prepare to expect from that type of conversation? So things like articles, things that you do like that in a law firm, Certainly, if they don't have enough work for you to do, then that's something you can do. But in general, like partners that you're working for, regardless of where you're at, their primary motivation is to have you work for them and do as many hours as possible and make the money. So that's just so if you want to write articles on legal topics or different practice areas, you can actually do those on your own. Or you may not need input from the partner, but if you're working on things like that and the law firm thinks you could be doing more work and you're not billing as many hours, they're not going to like that much. So the law firm's goal is to make as much money as possible. So I'm not saying that law firms don't like when people write articles and things. Sometimes law firms will ask you to write articles. Sometimes law firms will have you a partner may be working on. I mean, but in general, like you have to do all this stuff on your own. You have to generate business on your own. You have to build a brand for yourself outside of the money that the law firm's paying you on your own. I mean, but the law firm's most concerned with that. People that generate business as associates and partners and things, like they will go and do all this stuff. No one's telling them to spend 500 hours a year, 1,000 hours a year trying to generate business. Like the firm that's giving them work wants them to do the work to make the money. So all these sorts of things that you do that separate you from other people, you need to have your own initiative. So if you ask a partner what he thinks a good topic for an article would be, then he may give you the topic, but don't want to work on the article with you. That's not a bad thing. But at the same time, everyone's most concerned about them making money. Okay. I think this may be the last question. And if anybody has, and there may be a couple others, let me just see here. Okay, I do have a couple of questions there. If I were to work with a recruiter and I have limited resources, where's an appropriate budget that I should factor in to save for my placement project? Target market would be data privacy law in Washington, D.C. or New York. Okay, so recruiters they get paid by law firms or whoever hires you. So they're not you don't have to pay them. But if you're trying to work on if you're trying to target these different markets for data privacy in Washington, D.C., New York, then you would have to research and find firms to do that on your own. Those major markets are going to be, if you don't have experience doing it, I mean, you may be able to find something in small firms, or I don't know where you went to law school or anything like that, but typically those are going to be very competitive markets to get data privacy jobs in, because you're going to be competing against people that are already working there doing that work. But it doesn't mean you can't get a job there. I'm not saying that at all, but I don't think you would need a recruiter to help you do that. There's not a lot of data privacy openings. So at the same time, if you have a lot of experience in data privacy and you come from a great firm and stuff, then yeah, a recruiter would work for you. But there's not a lot of openings in data privacy. This is something that you'd probably have to, a lot of that you have to figure out on your own. And again, recruiters only work with people that have a lot of experience in a practice area. So no recruiter is going to be that interested in you. Anyone, I don't, maybe you might be, but unless you have like 2 or 3 years of experience doing data privacy and you're very well trained in it, a recruiter is not going to work for you, because recruiters can sell candidates, but they can only sell candidates that have experience in a practice area. So no one's going to pay a recruiter for someone that doesn't have experience in a practice area. So you just need to kind of think about that a little bit. So you'd have to do that on your own. And those are big markets. Like if you're trying New York City and New York, Washington, D.C., those are markets where there's a lot of attorneys. And so, you'd have to, there's more attorneys in Washington, D.C., than any other area of the United States per capita. I mean, the attorneys everywhere, probably in every building, and there's everywhere. There's tons of attorneys in New York. There's millions of people in there. So there's more attorneys than there are jobs in all those areas. So it becomes very difficult when you're applying for jobs unless you're making your mark on your own. I'm a recent law grad sitting at the Fairview Bar and currently pursuing an LLM in tax law from Washington with no tax experience at all, trying to pivot into the field. Any resume application advice. So what happens to a lot of tax LLMs that go to law school is they can't, there's the problem with tax is there's just not a lot of uh, tax openings. I mean, there's openings in tax controversy, which is like fighting the IRS. But there's not a lot in general, a lot of tax openings. So what would I do if I were you? I would probably, if it was me, I'm just telling you based on what I know about the market, I would probably try to pivot that experience into working in trust and estates, which would be a great career, and there's tons of work in that. But you may not want to do that. But I would try to pivot that experience and get a trust and estates job. What happens to most tax LLMs who have to go get a tax LLM is they end up going to work for accounting firms. They're unhappy, or they might like it, and then they try to get into law firms. But getting into a law firm from an accounting firm is very, very difficult, just because this is a different practice setting. I think tax is a great LLM to get just because of the thinking process, and I think it makes people better attorneys. But at the same time, tax LLMs scare me a little bit because there's just not a lot of tax work. I'm sure Washington University is a great school, has a really good tax LLM program, but at the same time, it can be difficult. Now, there's plenty of tax jobs for people, but large firms and middle market firms are often very, very difficult to get tax jobs in. The reason tax is a difficult practice here in large firms is it's often something that supports mergers and acquisitions, more of like a supporting type practice area for other practice areas. And so it's just difficult. I mean, it's a very, very difficult practice area. And certainly working in smaller markets or middle markets or smaller firms is going to be jobs. But it's an interesting practice area because usually the hours aren't that bad. But it's a very difficult practice area just because there's not a lot of great jobs and big firms in it. And but you can work in smaller markets. And I think this is just my advice is think about trust and estates very, very seriously, because there's a need for people with tax experience doing trust and estates. And so, so that, is important. Okay, I'll answer one other question. This is on webinar. Let's see here. How do you leverage networking opportunities to land a new position? This question is applicable in person or remote LinkedIn setting. So most people that are able to do good networking, what I recommend, this is one of the most important things to be able to get business, to getting jobs, is you should make a list of, maybe 100 people just write down everybody you know. Most people know 100 people that they could contact, and the people would not have any objection to being contacted with them. You contact those 100 people, you ask them how they're doing, they ask you how you're doing. You don't tell them you're looking for a job, but if they ask, you tell them, and you just develop a network of people and stay in touch with them. So most networkers are able to have all these different people that they contact on a constant basis without expecting anything in return. And then those people will find opportunities or whatever for them. So if you write down 100 people, those 100 people also know 100 people. And so 100 times 100 is whatever the number is. It's huge. And so if you plant seeds and you're nice to those 100 people, you take time to call, the email, and just go through those sort of people all the time, it can make a huge difference. Bill Clinton, I mean, I told this story before, but he famously, from the time he was in Georgetown, then all through Yale Law School, and he wrote down every single person he met. He would write a note card about them. He would write down everything he knew about them. And then he would try to stay in touch with those people. And even he saw someone like 25 years later, he would be able to ask about their kids or their mother or whatever, or their wife, and just all this information. So you need to, in order to network, you just need to stay in touch with people. You need to build a list of people you know, and then that can help you land new positions. But typically, just contacting someone asking for a job is not going to work. You have to plant seeds, and you have to be doing that for an extended length of time. Okay, well, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for being on the webinar. I think this was just a lot of great information today, and I really appreciate the questions and all this stuff. I mean, I commend you for spending all this time. I will tell you that I speak to, all the time. I mean, several times a week, I get emails and things from people that have been on these and have made really good career decisions because of it. whether it's finding a job or what they've concentrated on career, all this stuff can make a huge difference. So, this particular webinar, if you were to watch it again and go over it, I mean, you will have learned really some of the most important things to being successful in a law firm, to interviewing, to focusing your practice area, to deciding when to leave and not to leave. All these different things that we covered today are just huge. And I hope this is helpful. And thank you. And I will talk to everyone. I'll see everyone next week.